Chapter 1438. Zhou Qiyuan nodded with a serious expression. It seems like someone wants Major General Hua's life. You have to be very careful this time. With us here, they want Major General Hua's life? Let's ask them how many lives they have first. Yin Shixiang kicked the leg of the conference table with a fierce and arrogant expression. Zhao Liangzi raised the corners of his eyes and smiled sinisterly. Well said. If we're just decorations, then they can only be tributes. Zhou Qiyuan knew what they were capable of. He patted them on the shoulder with one hand and said, "You guys go. You must protect Major General Hua. Then I'll leave it to you." Zhao Liangzi also patted Zhou Qiyuan on the shoulder. Zhou Qiyuan's expression was serious. "Don't worry, I still have Xiaoyi on my side." "Oh, I forgot about her." Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang laughed at the same time. Xiaoyi was not just an ordinary person. Fortunately, she's back. Otherwise, we'd have one less person. Yin Shixiang turned to look at Zhao Liangzi. "I'll go pack another box of clothes and daily necessities for Major General Hua. What about you?" Zhao Liangzi said, "I need to pack my computer equipment. I need to bring a lot of equipment this time. There are 4 of us. It's enough for Hua Xiaoheng to have no worries." Zhou Qiyuan sat back behind his desk and started making calls to arrange a private plane for Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang. It was 8 o'clock in the morning when the two of them boarded the military plane to Rai City. Gu Nianji had just gotten into Xiao Ye's car and was heading to the Senate to officially take up her post. She chatted and laughed with Xiao Yi the entire way. She was in a very good mood until Xiao Yi received a call from Zhou Qiyuan. "Xiao Yi, something happened to the chief last night. We don't know how serious the situation is at the moment, so maybe we'll let you handle it. We'll wait for Major General Hua's notification for the specific job transfer." Zhou Qiyuan was very serious on the phone. "Don't let Miss Gu know for now. If she wants to know, we'll have to ask Major General Hua." Xiao Ye's expression changed, but she quickly calmed down. Their chief had actually been treated like that in Rai City. As a member of the Special Operations Forces, everyone felt humiliated. Gu Nianji saw that Xiao Yi had suddenly fallen silent after answering the phone and quickly said, "What's wrong? What happened?" Xiao Yi glanced at Gu Nianji and didn't tell her the truth. This was their internal affairs. If Gu Nianji wanted to know, only Hua Xiaoheng could tell her personally. Gu Nianji saw that Xiao Yi was avoiding the topic, so she didn't pursue the matter. She smiled and opened Weibo on her phone to browse the news. Because she had lived with Hua Xiaoheng in the military camp for 6 years, she was also very interested in the military and often followed military bloggers. As soon as she opened the homepage, a few hot searches made her raise her eyebrows. #Lifetime series. Personally witnessing a missile hitting a plane. Coordinates, Rai City, you know ##, is there something big going on? ##, I heard the plane of a high-ranking military official was shot down. Gu Nianji's heart sank. She was about to open it to take a closer look, but as soon as she clicked on it, she realized that the post had already been deleted. Following that, the news could no longer be found on the internet. It was as if the tags she saw just now were just her eyes playing tricks on her. Gu Nianji immediately remembered that Hua Xiaoheng had suddenly called her last night and said that General Ji had sent him to Rai City to participate in the organization of the military parade, so he wouldn't be able to send her to work. This mission wasn't a secret, so Hua Xiaoheng mentioned it to her. He even said that she would be able to see him on TV on the day of the military parade. She carefully calculated the time. The events, time and location mentioned in the tags just now all seemed to be right. Coupled with the special nature of Hua Xiaoheng's work, the more Gu Nianji thought about it, the more flustered she became. She couldn't help but call Hua Xiaoheng's phone. It rang a few times and the call was immediately picked up. Hua Xiaoheng's slightly lazy and deep voice came from the phone. "Nianji? Are you at work?" Hua Xiaoheng had just fallen asleep. As soon as he heard Gu Nianji's specific ringtone, he reflexively picked up his phone and answered the call. He was actually still half asleep. "I'm still on my way." Gu Nianji breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at her watch and asked in surprise, "You're still sleeping? Didn't you sleep last night?" It was past 8 in the morning. Hua Xiaoheng usually woke up at 6 for morning exercises and was back for breakfast by 7. Hua Xiaoheng woke up. He held his phone in one hand and rested the other on his forehead. He chuckled. That voice had its own seductive pheromones that made people's legs go weak. Gu Nianji's ears went numb, and her voice involuntarily became charming. She said angrily, "What are you laughing at? I was so worried about you and you still know how to laugh at me. What are you worried about? You still have to worry about me?" Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes and said calmly, "Are you going to be late for work?" Gun Yinji looked at her watch. Damn, it seemed like she was really going to be late. She quickly urged Xiao Yi, who was driving, hurry up, hurry up. We're going to be late. Xiao Yi was uneasy. She had indeed been a little distracted just now. She quickly composed herself, stepped on the accelerator and shot out like an arrow. Gun Yinji, after hanging up the phone, Gun Yinji realized that she had been distracted by Hua Xiaoheng again. She was angry and amused at the same time. However, although she was worried, she had called and knew that he was fine, so she didn't think too much about it. Because it was useless to think too much. Combined with the Weibo topics she had seen today and Hua Xiaoheng's attitude, Gun Yinji knew without thinking that the most dangerous moment had passed. Hua Xiaoheng had already averted the danger. She had no choice but to pretend that she didn't know anything. She didn't want Hua Xiaoheng to feel burdened. She hoped that he was still the same person, and not someone who would change himself to make her feel at ease. Just like how Hua Xiaoheng wanted her to be herself, and not a woman who would sacrifice her self-worth for the sake of a man. The car sped all the way and finally arrived at the Senate at 8:30 on time. Speaker Long had woken up early today and was actually waiting for her in his office. After she arrived, she first went to the various departments to complete the official entry procedures. Everyone was already very familiar with her, and they also knew that she was Hua Xiaoheng's fiancée and Mr. Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. They were both respectful and warm to her, and the procedures were completed very quickly. All the departments gave the green light, and it only took 15 minutes for everything to be completed. Gun Yinji put on the sign of the chief legal advisor of the Senate and wore a slightly mature navy blue professional suit as she arrived at Speaker Long's office. Speaker Long looked her up and down and nodded in satisfaction. Yinji, you've finally become a member of the Senate. Gun Yinji smiled. Speaker Long, don't say that. I'll be proud. Ah, you should be proud. We serve the country, so how can we not have a little pride? Speaker Long admired Gun Yinji's attitude very much, and personally took her to the various departments to formally introduce her to everyone. This is Lawyer Gu, and also the chief legal advisor of our Senate. In the future, if anyone has a legal problem, they must immediately inform Lawyer Gu's office. Since Gun Yinji was the chief legal advisor of the Senate, she certainly wasn't a commander without an army. I announced that in the next month, Lawyer Gu will be forming her team. If anyone is willing to sign up, you can immediately submit the application to her. Speaker Long smiled as he announced the recruitment information that had been discussed long ago. Although Gun Yinji was mentally prepared, she still blushed slightly. What did she have to do? She actually had her own team. She followed Speaker Long back to the top floor, and her current office area was opposite Speaker Long's office. The two of them occupied a full 2/3 of the top floor. Looking at the words, Chief Lawyer Gun Yinji, gilded on the door, Gun Yinji suddenly felt a sense of belonging. This was her world, her battlefield. She would overcome all obstacles here and she would be invincible. Gun Yinji walked in and looked at the brand new tables and chairs in the office, the large glass windows on the entire wall, and the room full of sunlight. She took a deep breath, turned to Speaker Long and said, Speaker Long, thank you. I like it here very much. As long as you like it. Speaker Long smiled like a Maitreya Buddha. There is one more person and I recommend her to be your office director. Gun Yinji nodded with a smile. No problem. The person recommended by Speaker Long must be amazing. Speaker Long chuckled and turned to his secretary. Ask Rong Mingxing to come up. Gun Yinji blinked, and her eyes involuntarily drifted in the direction of the door. Rong Mingxing? Is it really Rong Mingxing? Yes, she resigned from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think she is a promising talent, so I asked her if she would like to work in the Senate. She agreed, but you have to agree to let her be your office director. Speaker Long knew that Gun Yinji and Rong Mingxing had become sworn friends in India, and his intuition told him that they should be able to become work partners. Gun Yinji smiled and said, as long as she doesn't think it's a waste of her talent, I have no problem. Although she was the director of the Office of the Chief Legal Counsel, most of her work was administrative work. Rong Mingxing also graduated from B University Law School, so Gun Yinji was worried that she might not be willing to do these things. But when Rong Mingxing walked in, the first thing she said was, Lawyer Gu, please give me this opportunity. She looked at Gun Yinji nervously, obviously hoping to get the position. Gun Yinji trusted her character very much. She only thought about it for a second, then nodded and reached out to her. Director Rong, it's been a pleasure working with you. From now on, the legal affairs of the Senate would be handled by the two fledgling women. Rong Mingxing held Gun Yinji's hand tightly and said gratefully, Lawyer Gu, I will definitely work hard. If there is anything wrong with me, please advise me. Without the influence of Secretary Yang, Rong Mingxing returned to being a generous and amiable girl. After officially joining the Senate, Gu Nianji and Rong Mingxing began the screening of their own team. In addition to recruiting within the Senate, they also openly recruited from the public. For a while there were many applicants and resumes were received. Compared to Gu Nianji's team building in full swing, Hua Xiaoheng's investigation was also going smoothly. Ever since he arrived at the Rai City military base, he had focused on the exercise. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi took a private plane to the Rai City military base the day after the accident. Although Hua Xiaoheng had scolded them, he was still quite happy. He really needed help, and he needed help that he could trust. With their help, the cause of the accident was quickly found out. This was the second update of the day, Chapter 1427, I Will Be Proud. Double the monthly votes. You can vote for your monthly votes now. P.S. Thank you to the leader of Bagel 16 for the 10,000 Qidian coins yesterday. Chapter 1439. Major General Hua, we recovered the black box from the military plane from the Wooding River near Rai City and restored the entire accident. Zhao Liangzi used a computer 3D model to simulate the situation for Hua Xiaoheng. The Wooding River was the small river that Hua Xiaoheng had attempted to land in. Later, the plane was hit by a missile, and he had parachuted in advance and ended up falling into the river. The wreckage of the destroyed military plane and the black box also fell into the river at the same time. It did not cause any damage to the local people. Hua Xiaoheng looked up at the big screen in front of him. Zhao Liangzi clicked the mouse and played it frame by frame. At 9:15 p.m., when your private plane encountered a hurricane in the air and was struck by lightning, there was a strong magnetic field that erased the magnetic field code that was continuously sent by the military plane. We all know that the air defense system identifies air weapons by relying on the internal model of the weapon, which is to determine the enemy and friendly by receiving the magnetic field code sent by the private plane. Because the internal model of your private plane was erased by the magnetic field, when the plane flew into the surveillance range of the air defense system over Rai City, the air defense system determined that your private plane was an enemy and not a friend, and gave your private plane a warning. Of course, your private plane had already lost the ability to communicate with the ground. It did not receive the warning from the ground air defense system and was unable to respond correctly. Instead, it continued to descend. According to the situation, Rai City's air defense system determined that your private plane's approach was an enemy invasion, so it directly activated the portable surface-to-air missile. This was also the first barrier of the base's air defense system. Zhao Liangzi pointed at the 3D simulation icon on the big screen with a laser pointer and spoke frankly. Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms and listened to Zhao Liangzi's analysis without batting an eyelid. After a while he interrupted him. Even so, didn't the commanders of Rai City's Air Defense Command Room make their own judgment? They should have received an emergency signal from the imperial capital at that time. That's the only problem. Zhao Liangzi nodded and said seriously, we believe that the Air Defense Command System personnel of Rai City are too reliant on the system's intelligent identification function and do not have appropriate emergency measures. The intelligence system of this system is actually very low level and can only perform simple scene processing. It can't handle slightly more complicated situations such as your situation at that time. It can only mechanically execute the established procedures. Zhao Liangzi had been studying the artificial intelligence system on Gu Xiangwen's submarine for a while and had received a lot of inspiration. After seeing the amazing artificial intelligence on Gu Xiangwen's submarine, and then looking at the simple artificial intelligence of the Rai City's air defense system, it was like the difference between a primitive man who had just begun to evolve and a modern university graduate. They were on completely different levels. Yin Shixiang sat next to Hua Xiaoheng and snickered. So you're saying that this is the system's fault and not the fault of humans? You could say that. Zhao Liangzi set the model to play automatically and turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng. But ultimately, it's the fault of humans because the system was designed by humans. However, it also depended on whether it was intentional or not. These are two different things. If it was intentional, then someone wanted to kill Hua Xiaoheng. If he didn't have the ability, then it was Hua Xiaoheng's own bad luck to run into the system's gun. Hua Xiaoheng was deep in thought. He rested his chin on one hand and held a round gold coin in the other. His fingers moved slightly, and the round gold coin rolled around between his fingers, faintly discernible. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi looked at each other. They couldn't tell what Hua Xiaoheng was thinking. After a long time, Hua Xiaoheng slammed the round gold coin on the conference table and said, "Investigate them all." His gaze turned to Yin Shixiang. You're in charge of investigating people. He then looked at Zhao Liangzi. You're in charge of investigating the system. Hua Xiaoheng retracted his gaze and looked at the round gold coin in his hand. He said calmly, I have a feeling that this matter isn't that simple. This was an intuition he had developed from years of missions. There was no need for him to explain how important the Rai City military base was. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi knew it very well. Moreover, this year was a military parade every 10 days, and there would be a secret exercise after that. The people who came to attend the ceremony included almost all the high-ranking officials of the country. However, it was at this juncture that something like this suddenly happened. It was like a show of strength to them. If something went wrong with the system, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was a blatant provocation. Hua Xiaoheng was unconvinced. However, he didn't show it. After assigning tasks to Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi, he didn't stay idle. Yin Shixiang was in charge of investigating people, and Zhao Liangzi was in charge of investigating the system. Hua Xiaoheng focused his attention on the strong magnetic field that Zhao Liangzi had mentioned that had erased the model number of the private plane. If the hurricane that had suddenly appeared over the land wasn't particularly sudden, then the strong magnetic field that had appeared out of nowhere clearly showed that this storm wasn't a natural phenomenon, but a man-made one. However, the problem was that even if it was man-made, with their technical means, they wouldn't be able to reach that level to track the mastermind behind it. After Hua Xiaoheng processed the records on the black box, he sent the relevant information directly to Song Jining at the Institute of High-Energy Physics. Song Jining was now a big shot in the Huaxia Empire's high-energy magnetic field research. Song Jining was very surprised when she received Hua Xiaoheng's call. What? A strong magnetic field that can erase the model number of the plane. Who is this? So vicious. The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's mouth twitched. If I knew, believe me, I would be more vicious than him. But the problem is, I don't know who did it. Xiaoheng, you can't be like this. Science and technology aren't used to fight and settle personal grudges. Song Jining didn't agree with Hua Xiaoheng's point of view and educated him earnestly. Hua Xiaoheng thought for a moment and slowly told Song Jining about his private plane's accident. Song Jining's eyes reddened when she heard it. She slapped the table hard and said, Give me the information. I want to see who wants my son's life. I want him to die first. Didn't they say that science and technology weren't used to fight and settle personal grudges? Hua Xiaoheng curled the corners of his lips and comforted Song Jining seriously. Miss Song, don't be so agitated. Your son is lucky. They won't be able to take him. If he hadn't been anxious, he wouldn't have told Song Jining about his accident. In order to make Song Jining take this matter seriously, Hua Xiaoheng had put in a lot of effort. As expected, Song Jining threw her advice to Hua Xiaoheng out of the window and said angrily, No one can touch my family. If I remember correctly, this isn't the first time this strong magnetic field has appeared to take your life. If I can't find the mastermind behind this time, I don't deserve to be your mother. Hua Xiaoheng's throat tightened. He took a deep breath and said, Miss Song, if you don't deserve to be my mother, who does? This was the first time Song Jining had heard Hua Xiaoheng call her mother, since she had woken up, and her eyes instantly turned red. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she picked up a tissue to wipe the corners of her eyes and whispered, Okay, just you wait. I'll help you vent your anger. While Hua Xiaoheng was conducting an intense investigation at the Rai City military base, Gu Nianji was also working hard. Because Speaker Long had spoken and supported her, and Gu Nianji's abilities were obvious to all. In addition, her father, Gu Xiangwen, had just been exposed and was buried in the National Martyrs Cemetery. She was also the child of a martyr. She was respected and liked, and her work proceeded more smoothly than ever. Her chief lawyer's office was responsible for all law-related matters in the Senate, so she definitely wouldn't be able to do it alone. She had to have her own team. First, she agreed on the staffing from Speaker Long. The first semester would recruit 50 legal professionals and 20 office support members. They also required a law degree. Not only could the staff of the Senate sign up, but they could also be recruited from the public. As soon as the news came out, it blew up on the internet. Countless new law graduates treated this as a great opportunity. From undergraduate to master's and doctoral degrees, resumes flew to her office like snowflakes. Rong Mingxing was now her office director, and the #1 person on her team. She and Gu Nianji had been working together from dawn to dusk these past few days to screen resumes and pick out good candidates to prepare for the first round of written exams. Gu Nianji had designed a very complicated process for the recruitment of her office. First of all, Gu Nianji's office belonged to the Senate, so the people who came to recruit had to pass 3 rounds of written exams. These 3 rounds of written exams, according to the admission standards of the Senate, each exam score was top 50% of the people entered the next round. The last round of written exams was top 50% of the people directly entered the 3 rounds of written exams in the chief lawyer's office. The 3 rounds of written exams in the chief lawyer's office were professional tests, and only top 20% of the people entered the next round of written exams. After the last round of professional written exams, top 20% of the people entered the 3 rounds of interviews. After going through the entire recruitment process, as long as they were successfully hired, it would not only be a good test of the applicant's professional ability, but it would also be a huge test of their psychological endurance. Even if they weren't hired in the end, their entire mental outlook would be different. They had once climbed the highest peak and seen the most beautiful scenery. When they looked at the scenery at the foot of the mountain again, they would no longer be in fear and trepidation. Gu Nianji hoped that every exam would help those who were seeking jobs. In fact, after this, the recruitment process of the office of the Chief Legal Counsel of the Upper House of Parliament also became an important mark on the resume of the job seekers. This would make other employers look at them in a different light. The 2 of them worked overtime for more than 10 days and finally screened out the list of people who would enter the final round of interviews. There were more than 200,000 people who had signed up for the written exams, but in the end, only 240 people had entered the interview stage. In the last 3 rounds of interviews, 170 people would be eliminated, and only 70 people would be hired. In other words, the acceptance rate for the interviews was about 30%. But if all the people who had participated in the written exams were included, the acceptance rate was 3 in 10,000, which was more difficult than applying to any famous school. That night, the second round of interviews ended, and only 125 people were left to enter the final round of interviews. Gu Nianji and Rong Mingxing printed out the information of these 125 people from the computer and looked at the time. Tomorrow is the military parade. Everyone take a day off and watch TV at home. The time for the final round of interviews is set for the day after tomorrow. Gu Nianji signed her name on the document and said to Rong Mingxing, "I'll have to trouble Director Rong to send out the interview notice." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1428, I helped you vent your anger. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes in 2017. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Yesterday's monthly votes were too awesome, so there must be 3 updates today. The second update at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the third update at 8 o'clock in the evening. Moi. Chapter 1440. Rong Mingxing nodded with a smile. You're welcome, Lawyer Gu. I'll send the notice right away. Gu Nianji printed out the notice and said carefully, in order to let the interviewees know in time, in addition to announcing the final interview list on the website, we will also use email, text message and registered mail to inform the interviewees. That way there shouldn't be any omissions. Because it was already the 3rd round of interviews, these applicants had already come from all over the country to stay in the imperial capital. The registered mail from the same city express would ensure that the notice would be delivered to these people in time. In fact, the interview notice was also one of their credentials to attend the interview. Rong Mingxing put the notice into an envelope one by one, labeled it and said, after sending it out, I'll send the email receipt, text message receipt and registered mail receipt to your email for archiving. There's no need to call to inform, so it'll be less troublesome. Gu Nianji helped her label it and said, well, there are too many phone scams these days, so we don't have to call to inform the other party directly for the interview. Yes, we've already written online that there won't be phone calls, and our office won't charge anyone for the recruitment. Anyone who collects money under the guise of the office is a scammer. In the end, there are still people who are deceived. Rong Mingxing sighed and shook her head. Don't they know what the results of the exam are? Gu Nianji sorted the labeled registered letters one by one and said without looking up, we won't hire anyone like this. They don't even have the basic qualifications to work if they can't even see through this trick of a scammer. Scammers could deceive people either by taking advantage of people's sympathy or their greed. The former was impossible to guard against, but the latter could be avoided. If they couldn't resist the latter, then they really weren't suitable for their job. Even if they did, there would be big problems in the future. Rong Mingxing sealed the last notice into the envelope and said softly, there's nothing we can do about it. University students who have just graduated from school have never seen such a thing before. They learn from their mistakes. Wasn't I also bossed around by Special Assistant Yang back then? In the end, I was the one who went astray. Gu Nianji smiled at her. No one is a saint. Who doesn't err? It's good that you know your mistakes and can change. Rong Mingxing smiled embarrassedly and asked Gu Nianji curiously, Lawyer Gu, have you also made mistakes? Gu Nianji thought about it. I've also been deceived. It wasn't a loss of property, but the consequences were more serious. He almost lost his life. Rong Mingxing glanced at her. Seeing that she didn't want to say more, she didn't ask in detail. She smiled and said, then someone must have used your sympathy, right? Gu Nianji raised her eyebrows playfully and said, you're not taking advantage of my sympathy, but of my infatuation. Rong Mingxing almost laughed out loud. Really? You already have Major General Hua, so why are you infatuated with someone else? How good-looking he must be. Gu Nianji smiled but said nothing. Wasn't it because of the infatuated Hua Xiaoheng that she had been tricked into going to the Königssee in Germany? After finishing her work, Gu Nianji looked at her watch. It was already past 8 o'clock at night. She turned off the computer and said with a smile, I can get off work early today. These days, she and Rong Mingxing had not left the Senate building before 10 o'clock in the evening. Rong Mingxing also smiled and said, when I was in school I thought that going to work was enough and that I didn't need to study at night. Now I know that after going to work, there are only more requirements than studying at night. That's true. Gu Nianji nodded slightly. She had come to Hua Xiaoheng's side at the age of 12 and had been studying with a specially hired teacher in the Special Operations Forces. It wasn't until she passed the internal exam at the age of 17 that she went straight to the C University Faculty of Law to skip a grade and enter her third year. She graduated from university at the age of 18 and graduated with a master's degree at the age of 19. Thinking about it, she actually still had some regrets in her life. She had less years of student life than others. Walking out of the Senate building with Rong Mingxing, Gu Nianji looked up at the night sky. The moon tonight wasn't very bright. It was shrouded in dark yellow clouds and was hazy. Even the stars beside it seemed listless. Gu Nianji yawned and saw that Xiao Ye's car had already arrived. She said to Rong Mingxing, let's go, I'll take you back. These days, she and Rong Mingxing had worked overtime together. She was the one who sent Rong Mingxing back. She had a car anyway. However, Rong Mingxing shook her head today. No need, Lawyer Gu. It's still early today. I still want to go shopping and buy something. It was only past 8 o'clock, and the major shopping malls hadn't closed yet. She had to replenish her daily necessities and buy some food at home. She had been working overtime these past few days and was about to vomit from eating takeout. Gu Nianji watched Rong Mingxing get on the bus before getting into her car. Xiao Yi skillfully turned the steering wheel and drove Gu Nianji onto the highway. Gu Nianji rested her chin on her hand as she looked out the window at the night sky. She silently thought about Hua Xiaoheng and really wanted to call him. But she also knew that Hua Xiaoheng was very busy right now. Tomorrow was the military parade, and the Rai City military base was completely sealed off. Not long ago, everyone's phones had been taken away and no one was allowed to use their phones. Gu Nianji could only call Hua Xiaoheng through the landline. She couldn't even say a few words before something happened. After calling once, Gu Nianji stopped calling. Hua Xiaoheng would be back in a few days anyway. Tomorrow was the military parade and exercise. Hua Xiaoheng would be back in the imperial capital the day after tomorrow. Gu Nianji was in a surprisingly good mood. She turned to look at Xiao Yi with a smile. Seeing that she was in a good mood, she was about to tease her when she suddenly heard her phone ring. It was so late. Who was calling her? Gu Nianji didn't really want to pick it up, but the other party's ringtone rang again and again. She still took her phone out of her handbag. When she saw the number, her heart skipped a beat. This was the phone number of the Rai City military base. She had called before. It was the phone number of Hua Xiaoheng's dormitory. Was it really Major General Hua? Gu Nianji quickly swiped open the call and asked in surprise, Major General Hua, is that you? Hua Xiaoheng was sitting on the windowsill of the officers' dormitory at the Rai City military base. There was a bottle of beer in front of him and a cigarette in his hand. He took a puff and exhaled a mouthful of white smoke. His eyes were red from the heat. Today was the day before the military parade, and tomorrow would be the military parade and exercise. Everything was ready. The system was normal and the personnel investigation was normal. However, he still felt that something was wrong. After such a big mess, everything was normal now? Even if their skills hadn't reached this level, they couldn't be treated as fools. However, they couldn't find anything really useful. Hua Xiaoheng was in a bad mood and didn't have dinner that night. He took a bottle of beer back to the dormitory and chased away Yin Shixiang, who was poking his head out. Only then could he have some peace and quiet. He held the dormitory's landline phone. He wanted to call Song Jining and ask her how the investigation was going, but his fingers didn't listen to him. He automatically dialed Gu Nianji's cell phone number. Now that he heard Gu Nianji's soft voice of surprise, he smiled and felt much better. Yes, I just got off work. Hua Xiaoheng stretched his long legs and narrowed his eyes. What about you? What are you doing at home? Gu Nianji smiled. I just got off work too. I'm on my way home. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. It was almost 9 o'clock in the evening. So busy? He frowned and habitually cared about Gu Nianji. What did you eat tonight? You have to eat on time. You can't miss anything. Gu Nianji nodded obediently. Got it? I had a good dinner. I ordered takeout. There was soup, meat, and vegetables. I also ate 2 crab meatballs. Hua Xiaoheng grunted. Good girl. Gu Nianji, his perfunctory tone sounded so harsh. Gu Nianji looked at the dusky night outside the car window and asked quietly, What's wrong? Hua Xiao, something's on your mind? She could feel Hua Xiaoheng's depression and bad mood. Hua Xiaoheng wasn't surprised that Gu Nianji could feel his mood. She was one of the few people who could directly sense his emotions. Perhaps it was because he subconsciously didn't guard against her, so she could feel the change in his mood. Hua Xiaoheng took another drag of his cigarette and suddenly said, Nianji, I was almost hit by a missile half a month ago. Gu Nianji's smile froze on her face when she suddenly heard Hua Xiaoheng mention it. Her heart stopped for 3 seconds. The world was still and silent. She could only hear Hua Xiaoheng's voice on the phone. It sounded like it came from the distant horizon. After a long time, Gu Nianji finally found her voice and said quietly, You're finally willing to tell me these things? Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes. He held the phone in one hand and held a cigarette in the other. He said dryly, There's nothing I can't tell you. I just don't want you to worry. Then what are you going to say now? Aren't you afraid that I'll continue to worry? Gu Nianji smiled and her voice became more and more mellow. Xiaoyi felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. Gu Nianji was talking to Major General Hua. She was too much of an eyesore. Xiaoyi hurriedly got off the highway and parked the car by the side of the road. She said, I'm going to buy something. She ran into the convenience store by the side of the road. Gu Nianji sat in the car under the lights and whispered to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng heard Xiaoye's voice. Xiaoyi sent you home? Gu Nianji nodded. She got out of the car and went to the convenience store now. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was calm. If you're tired you can go back. I have to go to the command room later and check it one last time. Gu Nianji's heart ached for him. She wanted him to have a good rest, but she also knew that if he didn't have something on his mind, he wouldn't have called her at this hour. Okay, you have to take care of yourself too. Gu Nianji reminded him like a competent wife. If there's anything troublesome that doesn't affect your confidentiality, you can tell me. Even if I can't help you solve your problems, I have a pair of ears that I can lend to you. Hua Xiaoheng slowly raised his head. He could imagine Gu Nianji's current appearance. Her big eyes were filled with deep affection as she rubbed against his body. It was so sweet that he wanted to bite her a few times. This was the second update of the day. Chapter 1429, Hearts Connected. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes in 2017. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Yesterday's monthly votes were too awesome. There must be 3 updates today. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the third update. Moi. Chapter 1441. As Hua Xiaoheng thought about Gu Nianji, he lowered his head slightly and curled his lips. His mood actually improved. In fact, the matter was still unresolved, but it was no longer depressing. Everything should be fine now. Hua Xiaoheng retracted his hand and stood up from the windowsill. He tossed the cigarette into the trash can. It's just a few lines of code. That time was probably an accident. What code? Gu Nianji wanted to talk more with him, so she asked another question. Hua Xiaoheng thought for a moment and told her about how the missiles at the Rai City military base had mistaken his private plane for an enemy plane. He then said, I really want to improve the code for them, but this isn't something that can be done in a short period of time. I can only report it after the military parade. When Gu Nianji heard this, she felt that this situation was familiar. She frowned and muttered, Are you sure that the strong magnetic field erased the code of your private jet? It's not? No, there's an intelligent programming language mixed in the code of your air defense system? Listening to Hua Xiaoheng's recount, everything else was reasonable. The only thing that didn't make sense was that the people in the base's air defense command room had already discovered the mistake, but they couldn't cancel the operation. Hua Xiaoheng had always felt that something was wrong about this, but he couldn't find anything wrong with the code no matter how hard he tried. Until Gu Nianji's words broke the mystery. As if enlightened, Hua Xiaoheng threw the beer bottle in his hand into the trash can. I get it now. He hung up the phone and ran to the Air Defense Command Room. Gu Nianji's words reminded him of Hong Kongquan. At the time, the director of the Secret Service, Hong Kongquan, had taken advantage of the fact that Hua Xiaoheng was not in the Wuxia Empire to mix 4 lines of the Prologue AI programming language into the code of the Special Operations Force's Central Control Room to hide Hong Kongquan's whereabouts. That was how he had managed to repeatedly evade the Special Operations Force's search. It wasn't until he took the risk and killed someone for Tan Dongbang's wife, Kai Songyin, that he was exposed. That time, it was also Gu Nianji who had helped them find the 4 culprits. Countless thoughts flashed through Hua Xiaoheng's mind. Could it be that the matter with Hong Kongquan was still not over? He had originally thought that Hong Kongquan had been instructed by the Americans, and that the 4 lines of intelligent programming code had come from the US military. However, from the looks of it now, it might not have been the Americans. Because the Americans did not have such powerful means. Who could it be? Hua Xiaoheng went to the computer in the Air Defense Command Room and called Zhao Liangzi over. I found the direction. Hua Xiaoheng opened the software that Gu Nianji had used to search for intelligent programming codes. He saved it on a floppy disk and inserted it into the computer's mainframe. Now use this program to search the entire code system. Immediately use our special channels to establish contact with the central control system in the imperial capital. I want to use the central control system to take over all the automatic control systems here and conduct an investigation. Because their time was limited, they only had 12 hours from now until the end of the parade tomorrow. Therefore, they had to borrow the powerful processing power of the central control system processor to conduct the search. Zhao Liangzi came over to take a look and was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Another intelligent programming language. This base has such a broken AI system. How could it have such an advanced AI programming language? This is the enemy's cunning. The lower the level of our AI system, the more they'll be able to stealthily stir up trouble. Hua Xiaoheng replied calmly, this is the only direction. If I still can't find anything, then I'm just overthinking it. Zhao Liangzi had brought a lot of electronic equipment this time, enough to support a server group in the field during wartime. He called Yin Shixiang over, and the two of them set up the system in a flurry and began to establish a connection with the central control room. This base only had a local area network, but it also had the ability to contact the outside world. Hua Xiaoheng had already begun to use software to detect it. Not long after, the central control room in the imperial capital had established a connection with this side. They took over the system and began to operate the investigation at the same time. Zhao Liangzi and Hua Xiaoheng performed their respective duties and stared at the computer screen without blinking. Time passed by minute. At 8 o'clock the next morning when the military parade began, Hua Xiaoheng still hadn't found any suspicious codes. The intelligent programming language that Gu Nianji had reminded him of was nowhere to be seen. Could it be that they were really overthinking? Because of his doubts, he didn't go to the rostrum to sit with General Ji and the others for the parade. Instead, he stayed in front of the computer system in the Air Defense Command Room with Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang, racking his brains to retrieve the system code. After checking line by line, they were about to reach the last area. At that moment, the software's alarm program finally started. The beeping sound instantly filled the small Air Defense Command Room. Hua Xiaoheng took a closer look and indeed found a few lines of intelligent programming language. He quickly copied the few lines of program, put them into the flash drive, and opened it with another laptop to check carefully. As soon as he checked, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The intelligent programming language that he found this time was much more advanced than the 4 lines of intelligent programming language that Hong Kongquan had found last time. If the 4 lines of intelligent programming language the last time were still in the 2nd year stage, then the intelligent programming language this time was already in the 4th year stage. Artificial intelligence that was completely mature made people shudder just thinking about it. Hua Xiaoheng's palms were sweating. He quickly typed in lines of instructions on the laptop and finally isolated the lines of intelligent programming language. An hour passed and the military parade was about to end. Then it was time for the exercise. This time the exercise would have a coordinated battle between land and air, and the missiles would all be real. Hua Xiaoheng hurriedly connected to the system control of the exercise troops and directly searched the air defense system. An hour passed. When the troops were in position, the guns were loaded and the shells were aimed at the target. Wait, how could the coordinates here be the rostrum? Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his eyes and looked over again. The coordinates set by the surface-to-air missile were indeed the rostrum. He quickly pressed the button to cancel the coordinates. As expected, the system was in a state of out of control again. Just like the personnel in the Air Defense Command Room at that time, they wanted to cancel the automatic targeting of the missiles aimed at his private plane, but they couldn't do so no matter what. This was the intelligent programming language at work again. Wuxia now knew the reason and understood how to deal with it. He calmly typed a few lines of instructions, specifically targeting the keywords of the intelligent programming language. Lock, ban, and then delete them. Line after line of code was checked. Just as the Air Defense Forces were about to take action, Wuxia finally cleared all the intelligent programming language. Boom. There was a gunshot outside the window, and the shuttle-like light missile accurately hit the target it was supposed to hit. General G, Speaker Long, and Prime Minister Bai on the rostrum smiled happily and applauded. The rostrum was fine, they were safe. Wuxia's heart, which had been in his throat, finally relaxed. All of you, continue to monitor all the exercises. If there are any abnormal phenomena, immediately run the program in the system. Wuxia embedded Gunyanji's small program into the detection template of the central control system. It could be checked and killed at any time. If the other party had any other intelligent programming languages, as soon as they appeared, they would be mercilessly deleted by this small program. On the exercise ground, there were crackling gunshots, rumbling cannons, and billowing smoke. The cheers were like the waves of the sea that lasted for a long time. Wuxia's full attention was attracted by the exercise. He looked down from the tall tower of the Air Defense Command Room. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. At the same time, the entire country was watching the military parade and the exercise in front of their televisions. This fully enclosed maneuver was an eye-opener for everyone. On the day of the military parade, almost everyone was watching television or watching videos on their phones. Gunyanji didn't go to work that day. They had worked overtime for so long, so they took a day off today. They would go to work tomorrow and go to the Senate for the final round of interviews. She and Xiaoyi had prepared a lot of snacks. They sat on the sofa on the left and right, smiling as they watched the grand military parade on the 60-inch television in front of them, as well as the exercise that was as popular as a war movie. From time to time, they would discuss a few words and enjoy themselves. This was today's third update, Chapter 1430, Enlightenment. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes in 2017. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Yesterday's monthly votes were too awesome. Today you must have 3 updates. Mwah. Chapter 1442. The military parade was over, and the footage of the exercise was broadcasted. Gunyanji's eyes widened. She wanted to see Wuxia's figure on the rostrum, but no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find his dignified figure or his handsome, masculine, solemn and calm face. Where did he hide? Gunyanji muttered and changed her position on the sofa. Xiaoyi held a plate of raisins and ate them one by one. She smiled and said, "Stop looking. He's definitely not on the stage." Perhaps he was watching this grand military parade and exercise from a corner. If the people of the Special Operations Forces wanted to hide, no one would be able to find them. On the television screen, smoke billowed and the sound of gunfire became louder. This time, the closed-door exercise was supposed to be broadcast live online, but for some reason it was cancelled. Only the Imperial Capital television station was able to get some footage of the exercise and broadcast it on the television station. Although they knew that the angle was chosen to deter the foreign armed forces that were eyeing them covetously, the wonderful content was still too much for the eyes to take in. Bismarck, the German Prime Minister, once said that the truth was only within the range of the cannon. Today there were only 3 great truths in the world: Dongfeng, Baiyang, and the militia. They were the names of the strategic nuclear missiles owned by the Wuxia Empire, Russia, and the United States respectively. Today they were fortunate enough to witness the greatest truth of the Wuxia Empire, Dongfeng 31 AG. Of course, the greatest truth couldn't be used during the exercise, but pulling it out for a spin was enough to excite people. Everyone's attention was on the military base in Rai City. All the equipment and surveillance cameras were also aimed at the military base in Rai City. Because of the dangerous situation they had discovered earlier, they had doubled the surveillance cameras there. The sound of the television was transmitted through the high-quality stereo surround sound system and echoed in the living room. It was as if a large handful of fireworks had been set off in front of their house, filling their ears. So much so that they didn't hear the elevator at the door that could only be used by residents to get up and down quietly stop on their floor. Looking at the direction of the elevator button, it was coming down from upstairs. Hua Xiaoheng had chosen this apartment complex on the Third Ring Road because it was high-end and had excellent privacy protection. There was one household on each floor and the elevator went straight into the house. Other than the residents with the access card, no one could stay on their floor. He didn't expect that this excellent protection of privacy was also a double-edged sword. The elevator door opened and 4 unattractive men dressed in black walked out. The first thing the leader did was raise his hand and fire a shot at the camera Gu Nianji had installed at the door. The silent pistol made a muffled bang and the camera shattered. Xiao Yi, who was in the room, keenly sensed that something was amiss. She listened carefully, but it seemed that she couldn't hear anything. She glanced at the monitor next to her hand. She could see the surroundings of the apartment from here. The monitor was still showing the scene from 5 minutes ago. She stared at the time on the monitor for a while and felt that something was wrong. Just as she was about to go to the door to check, she heard the doorbell ring. Gu Nianji also heard it. She turned her head and asked in confusion, "Why would someone ring the doorbell at this hour? Xiao Yi, is she your friend?" Other than Hua Xiaoheng and He Jichu, the only people who knew her address and could still come up were probably Xiao Yi and the people from the Special Operations Forces, such as Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi. Xiao Yi shook her head and became even more vigilant. She stood up and silently scurried to the door like a cat. She peeked through the peephole. Xiao Yi was even more confused when she saw 4 men wearing sunglasses and black clothes standing at the door. She was about to ask when the person waiting at the door seemed to be impatient. He took out a gun and fired a few shots at the door lock. Xiao Yi ran back and grabbed Gu Nianji from the sofa. She pushed her into the bedroom and hid. "Take the gun and find a place to hide. Call the police. No matter what you hear, don't make a sound." Xiao Yi pulled out a gun from her thigh and stuffed it into Gu Nianji's hand. Then she closed the door tightly. She rushed to the living room and found a place to hide. As she loaded the gun, she took out her phone and began to contact the Special Operations Forces. She knew that other than herself, Hua Xiaoheng had also arranged for Gu Nianji to be protected in secret. Although it was a military parade today, there should be people on duty. However, after dialing for a long time, she couldn't get a single signal. Xiao Ye's heart pounded. Electromagnetic shielding. These people had actually set up electromagnetic shielding. Then the surveillance cameras must have been destroyed by them. If the news couldn't get out, no matter how many arrangements Hua Xiaoheng made, it would be useless. What should she do? Xiao Yi made a decision in an instant. She closed her eyes. Her 29-year-old life flashed before her eyes. After so many years of risking life and death, it wasn't as dangerous as this one. She had never thought that the most dangerous situation she would face would be in Gu Nianji's house, in a high-class apartment on the Third Ring Road of the imperial capital. Xiao Yi turned around and kicked open the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. At the same time she fired. If the electromagnetic signal couldn't be sent out, she wanted the commotion here to be heard. However, after firing a few shots, she realized that the balcony was actually equipped with fully enclosed bulletproof glass. Her volley of bullets only made a few cracks in the balcony glass. From the moment Xiao Yi made her decision to the moment the other party finally broke through the door, it seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like a long time had passed. When Xiao Yi turned around, a man had already pounced on her. He grabbed her hand that was firing and pulled it down. He raised his knee and broke her wrist. Then he kicked her horizontally. With a crack, Xiao Ye's calf was broken by his kick. Xiao Ye's bones were also hard. She was in so much pain that cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She didn't even make a sound. The other party seemed to be surprised by her stubbornness and loosened his grip slightly. Xiao Yi fell to the ground at a strange angle with a thud. One of her hands was soft and collapsed, and her wrist was almost 180 degrees. Needless to say, the broken calf couldn't support her body at all. The man walked around the room and glanced at the tightly closed door of the bedroom. He turned back to look at Xiao Yi, who was lying on the ground. He said calmly, "Miss Gu, I know you're here. If you come out, I'll let her go." He held the gun in his hand and aimed it at Xiao Yi, who was lying on the ground. He raised his hand to look at his watch. They had been preparing for this plan for nearly half a year, but they only had less than 10 minutes to wait for this opportunity. 10 minutes later, the other party would realize that the surveillance here had failed and would immediately send someone over. At that time, it would be questionable whether they would be able to escape. Gu Nianji was trembling in fear in the bedroom. This wasn't the first time she had faced this situation. The first time, she had seen 2 Special Operations Forces field agents killed in the small forest in Germany. This time she was going to watch Xiao Yi die in front of her again. "Miss Gu, we didn't mean to hurt you. You know, if we wanted you to die, we could have blown up the Parliament building or the apartment building. The man spoke as if he was strolling leisurely. His hands weren't idle either. With a bang, he shot Xiao Ye's other wrist that wasn't broken and broke it as well. Xiao Ye let out a low growl and bit her lower lip until it bled. Gunyanji lay in the crack of the bedroom door and watched the scene with wide eyes. She saw the blood flowing out of Xiao Ye's wrist and staining the milky white carpet red. She didn't know how many times she had called, but not only could she not send a text message, but she also couldn't make a phone call. Electromagnetic shielding. These people had actually used electromagnetic shielding to deal with her. Gunyanji really didn't know what she had done to make these people go to such extremes. Still not coming out? Okay, I'll count to 10. Every time I count, I'll shoot until she's dead. As the man spoke, he aimed the gun in his hand at Xiao Ye and coldly fired one shot after another. First her left arm, then her right arm, then her left thigh, her left calf, her right thigh, and her right calf. Xiao Ye let out a scream that she was caught off guard. She couldn't tolerate being shot in the bone even if she wanted to. Screaming was a human's instinct when fighting against pain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There was only one shot left. The man's gun was aimed at Xiao Ye's head. Xiao Ye's entire body was covered in blood. She lay on the snow-white carpet that was already stained red with blood. It was bright red, as if she was wearing a bright red evening gown. She had been shot more than once in all 4 limbs, and her injuries looked very serious. Even if she didn't die, she might be crippled for life. Her face was facing Gunyanji's direction. Her eyes were closed, and her beautiful face was as pale as a dead person's. She looked like a porcelain sculpture without a trace of life. Her long legs, which had once been able to jump and kill people, might never be able to stand up again. Gunyanji covered her mouth with her hand. Tears fell like rain in the bedroom. She finally couldn't take it anymore. Xiao Ye had used her own life to save her, and she could also use her own life to save her. She pointed the loaded gun at her head with one hand and pushed open the bedroom door. Gunyanji said coldly, "Stop. If you shoot again, I'll shoot too." She knew that the other party really wanted to capture her alive, so her threat to commit suicide was the most effective. Just like what that person had said, if they only wanted her dead, there was no need to torture Xiao Ye to death. They could just throw a bomb into the house and she and Xiao Ye would definitely die. Since the other party was afraid of hurting her, she could only use her life to threaten the other party. She had no other choice. Besides, even if the other party was lying, what chance did she have of winning? Xiao Ye had asked her to hide in the bedroom. She had probably thought that if they called the police immediately, the people from the Special Operations Forces would arrive immediately. At most, the two of them would sacrifice Xiao Ye's life to buy time for her. However, Xiao Ye had underestimated the other party's methods and had misjudged Gunyanji. Gunyanji had never been the kind of person who would watch others die for her. The deaths of the 2 Special Operations Forces field agents in Germany were already her nightmare. How could those 2 people compare to Xiao Ye's relationship with her? The 4 of them looked relieved when they saw Gunyanji walk out of the bedroom. The man with the gun even immediately threw his gun to the ground and spread his hands. He smiled at her and said, "See, I keep my word. Miss Gu, don't be afraid. We're not bad people. We're here to take you home." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1431, Take You Home. It was 2018 today and they could still vote for their monthly votes. It was still double the monthly votes. This year would be busier and the time available was really limited, so the threshold for monthly votes was raised a little. During the double period, the monthly votes would be 1,000 plus 1 update. During the single period, the monthly votes would be 500 plus 1 update. There would be 1 update a day. If there was an additional update, it would be at 8 o'clock at night. There would be an additional update at 8 o'clock tonight. Mwah. Chapter 1443. Go home? Go home. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere. Gunyanji pointed the gun at her temple and said coldly, "She's bleeding so much. You can't just let her lie here. Hurry up and call an ambulance. Otherwise I'll shoot." The man scoffed. "If I had known earlier, I would have shot her the moment I opened the door. I wouldn't have had to bother calling an ambulance." Gunyanji rolled her eyes. "If she had shot you when you came in, you wouldn't have had anything to do with her now." What do you think? If she had shot at us first, she would have been a dead person by now." The man took out a strangely shaped gun from behind him and aimed it at Gunyanji. "Actually, I could have shot her dead when I was outside the door. She was smart enough not to fight us head-on. Experts only needed to look at each other to know if they were a match for each other. He could deal with Xiao Yi alone, not to mention there were 4 of them. Xiao Yi must have weighed the pros and cons before using the best way to stall for time. However, she hadn't expected these people to be more powerful than she had expected. However, our goal isn't to kill her, so since she didn't make the first move, we won't send her to her death immediately. The man bowed politely. They had all investigated and prepared for this operation. They had all considered their respective situations. They knew very well how powerful Xiao Yi was. The people they had sent this time were all carefully selected. Even if Hua Xiaoheng came personally, they would still be able to fight against her. To deal with Xiao Yi, they needed to be able to defeat her in one move. They couldn't give her any room to fight back. As soon as this person succeeded in his attack, he immediately broke Xiao Ye's limbs and disintegrated her combat power. He stood there calmly. He looked very calm, but the expression in his eyes was very vigilant. You make the call first. Gu Nianji's hand holding the gun began to tremble. She had never experienced anything like this before. When she was at the Taj Mahal in India and Cape of Good Hope in Cape Town, she thought she had already seen a lot of things. Now that she was facing these 4 seemingly amiable men, it was as if she was facing an army of thousands. The 4 of them had a strong murderous aura. When she was pushed into the bedroom by Xiao Yi, she had thought that with Xiao Ye's skills, they would be able to hold on until the people from the Special Operations Forces arrived. In the end, Xiao Ye's wrist was dislocated and she fell to the ground. How could these people be so powerful? She hid in the bedroom and in less than a minute she heard 9 gunshots outside. When she rushed out, Xiao Yi was already lying in a pool of blood. Gu Nianji's eyes reddened and she yelled, "Call an ambulance." While she wanted Xiao Yi to be treated in time, she also wanted to stall for time. Xiao Yi had used her life to fight for a chance to survive for her. She couldn't let it go to waste. She had to do something for Xiao Yi. The man put the gun back on the waist of his pants and took out his phone with one hand. He lowered his head and dialed a few numbers. Suddenly, a round gold coin popped out of his other hand and hit the numbing point on Gu Nianji's elbow. Gu Nianji's arm that was holding the gun suddenly went numb. Her wrist lost strength and the gun fell to the ground with a clatter. "Take him away." The man immediately rubbed his body and took out a handkerchief to cover her mouth and nose with one hand. He twisted her arm behind her back with the other and kicked her gun far away. Gu Nianji quickly held her breath, but she still fainted from the smell of the handkerchief. The 3 people behind her quickly stepped forward. One of them put a hat on Gu Nianji's head, covering her face completely. At the same time, they took off the diamond earrings from her earlobes and threw them on the carpet. Another person held Gu Nianji's other arm and held her on both sides with the leader as they rushed into the elevator. The last person threw a bottle of tear gas into the room. White smoke suddenly emerged. Xiao Yi had just woken up from the pain, but she was immediately choked by the tear gas. She quickly fainted again. The 4 of them brought Gu Nianji, who had been knocked out by them, down the elevator and quickly ran to a black SUV parked in the underground parking lot. The 5 of them got into the car and the driver stepped on the accelerator. The black SUV sped forward like an arrow leaving the bow. After the Special Operations Forces discovered that there was a problem with the surveillance cameras on Gu Nianji's side, they immediately rushed over and brushed past the black SUV on the road. 5 minutes later, the black SUV arrived at an intersection near the 3rd ring road of the imperial capital. There was a lot of traffic and tall buildings here. Traffic lights were hung high at the 4 exits, and the surveillance cameras looked left and right, staring in the north and south directions. When the black SUV drove into the central surveillance camera at the intersection, an 18-wheeler truck suddenly drove over and blocked the surveillance camera. When the 18-wheeler truck left, 4 identical black SUVs appeared on the surveillance camera. They drove in 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. Some of the cars at this intersection had noticed that there was only one black SUV driving over. How did 4 black SUVs appear in the blink of an eye after the truck drove away? However, they only took a glance and thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. After all, this intersection was too busy, and it was the imperial capital. It was common for several identical cars to appear. The 4 men in black had taken exactly 10 minutes from the time they appeared at Gu Nianji's door to the time they took her away in the black SUV. Their methods were unusually clean and efficient, and they had taken into account all kinds of factors. They had made use of the time difference to perfection. During this time, not a single neighbor upstairs or downstairs had been alerted. This was because the privacy of this apartment was so well protected that even the neighbors didn't interact with each other. Within 10 minutes, the people from the Special Operations Forces had arrived downstairs of Gu Nianji's apartment. They had a key card and could come up. As soon as they arrived downstairs, they found that the surveillance had actually been restored. It was as if the 10 minutes of loss of control were like a system malfunction. What's going on? Is it a system malfunction? They muttered downstairs but still decided to make a phone call to ask. They couldn't even get through to the phone just now, and they were so scared that their legs almost went limp. They hoped that it was just a false alarm. A staff member first dialed Gunyenji's number. Not long after, the standard answer of the robotic female voice came from the other end. The number you have dialed is not in the service area. Please try again later. Where did she go? They looked at each other and already felt that something was wrong. As they walked into the elevator, they dialed Xiao Ye's number. Xiao Ye's number went through, but there was no answer. However, after Xiao Ye's phone rang a few times, her voice message came through. I'm in danger. Please come and rescue me quickly. This was a special automatic reply set up for her phone. At that time was tight. Xiao Yi saw that she couldn't make the call, so she only had time to change her automatic message reply. This was also the exclusive function of the phones of the members of the Special Operations Forces. Oh no. Something really happened. These people rushed out of the elevator and saw that the door lock of Gunyenji's apartment had been smashed into a sieve. When they pushed open the door again, they saw a bloody person lying on the snow-white carpet. The tear gas in the room floated out. These people were caught off guard. They coughed repeatedly and kept wiping their tears. They quickly took out their masks and goggles and put them on, then rushed in. It's Xiao Yi. Why are they so ruthless? They immediately took action. Someone was calling for backup, someone was calling for an ambulance, someone was performing an emergency bleeding control on Xiao Yi, and someone was immediately calling Zhou Qiyuan, the leader of the headquarters base, to report that something big had happened here. Fortunately, for people from the Special Operations Forces had come. Otherwise they would have been really busy. Zhou Qiyuan received the call and was so shocked that he almost pushed over the computer in front of him. What did you say? Xiao Yi was seriously injured. Where's Miss Gu? Where's Miss Gu? The man held the phone and walked around Gunyenji's apartment. He said, we didn't see Miss Gu. We called her number and said that her phone was not in the service area. Zhou Qiyuan's heart couldn't help sinking. He took a deep breath and said, I'll send a large group of reinforcements. You guys keep an eye on the scene and don't let the Imperial Police get involved for the time being. After putting down the phone, Zhou Qiyuan immediately used the orange phone with the highest security level of the Special Operations Forces to call the switchboard at the Rai City military base. I'm Senior Colonel Zhou Qiyuan of the Special Operations Forces. I have a very important situation to report to Major General Hua Xiaoheng. Please find Major General Hua Xiaoheng immediately. The switchboard saw that it was the orange phone with the highest security level and knew that something big had happened. It immediately sent someone to the Air Defense Command Room to find Hua Xiaoheng and said, Major General Hua, Zhou Qiyuan of the Imperial Capital Special Operations Forces is looking for you on an orange phone. Please answer the phone quickly. Hua Xiaoheng had just retracted his gaze from the window when he heard that it was Zhou Qiyuan's orange phone. His eyelids twitched involuntarily. He stood up calmly. Where's the phone? In the switchboard. Hua Xiaoheng walked as fast as the wind. After walking out of the Air Defense Command Room, he almost started running. He quickly went to the switchboard and answered Zhou Qiyuan's call. This is Hua Xiaoheng. Zhou Qiyuan couldn't help but stand at attention. Major General Hua, the situation isn't good. Xiao Yi was attacked and Miss Gu is missing. She's in the third ring apartment. Hua Xiaoheng heard this and took a full 3 seconds to react. Say that again. Major General Hua, Xiao Yi was attacked and Miss Gu is missing. She's in the third ring apartment. Hua Xiaoheng's mind buzzed and his vision turned black. He had to use all his strength to stabilize himself. I'll be right back. He didn't ask any more questions and said to the person in the switchboard, I have something urgent to attend to and need to return to the Imperial capital immediately. Help me tell General Ji and the others. Also, arrange a private plane for me to take off in 10 minutes. Have Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi go to the airport immediately. He left the switchboard without looking back and ran back to his dormitory. Hua Xiaoheng returned to his dormitory and only packed his laptop and phone. He didn't take any other luggage and ran straight to the airport. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were also stunned when they received the news. Zhou Qiyuan's orange phone. Oh my god. This is a huge mess. Yin Shixiang slapped his head. Let's go, let's go. He pushed Zhao Liangzi back to the dormitory and only packed his laptop and phone. He asked the orderlies to pack everything else for them to bring back. They arrived at the airport in 10 minutes. The plane was about to take off. Wait for us. Wait for us. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi ran over out of breath. They finally got on the plane a second before the plane door closed. When they found Hua Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi sat next to him and asked worriedly, Major General Hua, what happened? Hua Xiaoheng had just spoken to Zhou Qiyuan on the phone again. His expression was extremely grim. Xiao Yi was attacked and Yanji was kidnapped. This was today's second monthly vote of 1,000 plus updates. Chapter 1432, There's always someone stronger than you. It was 2018 today, so you could still vote for your monthly votes. P.S. Thank you to Little One Kiss for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 1444. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi never imagined that Gu Nianji would be in trouble again. The two of them were stunned for a minute before they said in unison, Why is there still someone watching Nianji? Gu Xiangwen and his wife's bodies had been buried in the National Martyrs Cemetery, and the newspapers had also published their deeds. It was obvious that Gu Xiangwen's technology and legacy had been inherited by the Huaxia Empire. Was Gu Nianji's daughter still that important to those people? Hua Xiaoheng had always been calm and collected, but this unexpected turn of events still shocked him greatly. He could only use silence to resist losing his composure. Yin Shixiang was the first to react. He anxiously picked up his phone and called Zhou Qiyuan. Zhou Qiyuan, what's going on? Are all of our arrangements just for show? Yin Shixiang kicked the back of the seat in front of him. Where's Xiao Yi? How is it? Nianji has a location. Can you find out where she is now? Over the years, the Special Operations Forces had not always been victorious. However, this was the first time they had allowed someone else to seriously injure their own people and take away the person they were supposed to protect under such strict security conditions. Not only did he lose miserably, he also lost face. Zhou Qiyuan was still able to keep his composure. He was currently in front of the operating room in the Special Operations Forces hospital building. He looked at the red light on the door that said, Surgery in Progress, and said in a low voice, We can't locate Nianji right now. As for Xiao Yi, Chenlai is operating on her. His wrists, arms and legs were shot a total of 10 times. His wrists were fractured and his calves were fractured. However, the opponent was more restrained. His marksmanship was very accurate and his technique was also very strange. Other than the one shot on his wrist that shattered his carpal bone, the other 9 shots did not hurt his bones, nor did they hit his arteries. But she's injured her tendons and veins. Chenlai is operating on her to remove the bullet and suturing her tendons and wound at the same time. Chenlai had originally been sent by Zhou Qiyuan to the military base in Rai City to check on Hua Xiaoheng's injuries. After Hua Xiaoheng was fine, he returned to the capital. Fortunately, he went back early so that he could treat Xiao Yi immediately. Zhou Qiyuan paused. There was something he didn't say out loud. He thought to himself that it would be better to wait for Hua Xiaoheng to come back and let him confirm it himself. Yin Shixiang was stunned for a long time before he said angrily, Damn it! Should we thank them for sparing our lives? These bastards. If I catch them. Don't talk big. Hurry up and come back. This time it's more troublesome. Zhou Qiyuan thought of the scene in Gu Nianji's apartment, and his mood was also very heavy. He protected the scene and only carried Xiao Yi away. He was waiting for Hua Xiaoheng to come back and make a decision. After all, Gu Nianji was no ordinary person. She was Hua Xiaoheng's wife. On the day that Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji signed the marriage contract, Zhou Qiyuan was one of the people present, but he didn't tell anyone. Therefore he knew how much Gu Nianji meant to Hua Xiaoheng. He hoped that his chief would be able to get through this. Yin Shixiang hung up the phone with a gloomy expression and said to Hua Xiaoheng, Chenlai is already operating on Xiao Yi. Zhou Qiyuan said that the opponent was very restrained, and his marksmanship was very accurate. Although he shot her arms and legs 10 times, 9 of the shots avoided her bones and main arteries. Zhao Liangzi was deep in thought as he leaned forward. What does that mean? Did they want to use this method to show mercy? Could it be that they won't treat Nianji too? Come on, it's already a heinous crime that they dared to kidnap Nianji. Not to mention injuring Xiao Yi like that. That's 2F** King Vicious. Yin Shixiang was filled with righteous indignation. Just like the staff members of the Special Operations Forces who had rushed into Gu Nianji's apartment, they were actually not kind people. They had used all kinds of methods outside. However, there was one thing. Their methods were only external, not internal. Moreover, everyone had their own selfish motives. They could use all kinds of methods on others, but when they saw someone use such methods on their own people, they couldn't take it anymore. They truly thought that the other party was too vicious. Hua Xiaoheng's face twitched when he heard the name, Nianji. The news of Gu Nianji's kidnapping had shocked him more than he had expected. It was only now that he forced himself to calm down. Only by calming down could he think normally. He held his phone tightly in one hand and sat upright in the plane seat. His gaze was fixed on the blue sky and white clouds outside the window. His heart was burning with anxiety and every day felt like a year. The military plane whistled and arrived at the imperial capital airport in only an hour and a half. It was twice the normal time. Hua Xiaoheng got off the plane. Orderly Fan Jian was already waiting at the airport in the car. He picked up Hua Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi and drove directly to the apartment on the 3rd Ring Road. Exactly 2 hours had passed since the incident. On the carpet of Gu Nianji's apartment, Xiao Ye's blood had yet to dry. It took another half an hour to get from the airport to the underground parking lot of the apartment on the 3rd Ring Road. Gu Nianji's apartment was surrounded by people from the Special Operations Forces, so the local police were not alerted. When Hua Xiaoheng walked out of the elevator, his expression was unprecedentedly gloomy. He looked up and saw that Gu Nianji's door lock had been pierced through, and he could see light shining through. He moved his gaze up and realized that the surveillance camera in the corridor had also been broken. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a moment. He turned to look at Zhou Qiyuan, who was waiting at the door. "What about the surveillance footage?" Zhou Qiyuan said seriously. "The surveillance footage was blank for 10 minutes. Our people found out that there was something wrong with the surveillance footage, so they called Xiao Yi and Miss Gu. Unfortunately, they were a step too late." Hua Xiaoheng didn't go in immediately. Instead, he walked back and forth a few times in the corridor in front of Gu Nianji's apartment. He looked around and said, "Where are the others?" Xiao Yi wasn't the only person he had sent to Gu Nianji's side. Zhou Qiyuan sighed. Those people rushed over immediately. It took them less than 10 minutes to arrive at the scene, but Hua Xiaoheng interrupted him. "You mean the other party blocked the surveillance footage, seriously injured Xiao Yi, and then kidnapped Nianji within 10 minutes? He tried his best to hold it in, but the veins on his forehead were already throbbing, indicating that he was on the verge of exploding with rage. From the time of the surveillance footage, that seems to be the case." Zhou Qiyuan took a step to the side. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" He added, "Nothing inside has been touched. We only carried Xiao Yi away." Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a long time. He suppressed his anger and walked in. The apartment he was very familiar with was no longer what he was familiar with. The snow-white carpet had been dyed blood red. A human figure had been drawn in chalk in the middle of the carpet. It was probably where Xiao Yi had fallen. Hua Xiaoheng stood next to Xiao Ye's fallen human figure for a while, then walked around the room. Just as he was about to reach the door, his eyes flashed and he saw something shining. Although he had been mentally prepared ever since he heard Zhou Qiyuan say that Gu Nianji's location had nothing to do with her, his heart still sank when he saw her diamond earring lying alone on the floor. Not many people knew that the diamond earring was a positioning device. Only Zhao Liangzi, Yin Shixiang, and Zhou Qiyuan knew. Of course, he and Gu Nianji also knew. Could it be that Zhao Liangzi, Yin Shixiang, and Zhou Qiyuan had tipped them off? But how was that possible? If these people had really tipped them off, Gu Nianji would have been kidnapped 800 years ago. She wouldn't have waited until now. The last time she had an accident, her earring hadn't been exposed. Hua Xiaoheng pondered to himself. Although he didn't suspect Zhao Liangzi, Yin Shixiang, and Zhou Qiyuan, he still needed concrete evidence to prove that these people had nothing to do with Gu Nianji's disappearance. He bent down to pick up the diamond earring from the ground and held it in his hand. Hua Xiaoheng's gaze swept past Yin Shixiang, Zhao Liangzi, and Zhou Qiyuan. Zhou Qiyuan had seen the diamond earring a long time ago. He knew that Hua Xiaoheng would definitely be suspicious of them when he discovered the diamond earring. However, this was a normal procedure. If he were Hua Xiaoheng, he would also investigate them. Therefore, he said frankly, "Major General Hua, I can tell you all my whereabouts over the past few months. Please investigate me." Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They could guarantee that they hadn't done anything to Gu Nianji, and they could even guarantee that Zhou Qiyuan hadn't. However, if the three of them hadn't said anything, how did the other party know that Gu Nianji's diamond earring had a positioning function? This was too terrifying. Hua Xiaoheng tightened his grip and said calmly, "I believe you. If it weren't for you, Nianji would have left this world a long time ago. But even if you believe me, you should still investigate each other." "Yes, sir." Yin Shixiang, Zhao Liangzi, and Zhou Qiyuan stood at attention and saluted. Hua Xiaoheng was still calm and collected. He said unhurriedly, Big Xiong, Little Zhe, Qiyuan, and Xiao Yi, the four of you are the people I trust the most. I hope you don't feel burdened. I have absolutely no intention of suspecting you, but we are all in this line of work. If we investigate each other, we might be able to find new clues. Zhou Qiyuan, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi nodded in unison. Major General Hua, we understand. Don't think too much about it. Yin Shixiang was inspired and suddenly said, Major General Hua, this matter isn't that simple. Zhao Liangzi rolled his eyes. Of course it's not that simple. Do I need you to say that? What I mean is, think about it. Nianji is missing, but Xiao Yi is also seriously injured. At the same time, Little Zhe, Qiyuan, and I have all become Major General Hua's suspects. Don't you think that the mastermind is also targeting Major General Hua? Yin Shixiang pointed at the cracks on the balcony glass. Looking at the bullet marks, it should be a bullet fired by Xiao Yi. You know how capable Xiao Yi is. If she wasn't powerful, she wouldn't have been able to escape unscathed after being in the field for so many years. Zhao Liangzi came back to his senses and said with realization, That's right. Major General Hua trusts the four of us the most. He had always suspected that Xiao Yi was Hua Xiaoheng's fourth personal secretary, but Hua Xiaoheng had never shown any intention of doing so. After Zhou Qiyuan, the personal secretary, surfaced, Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang had always been curious about who was the fourth. Could it really be Xiao Yi? That would be such a pity. Zhao Liangzi shook his head and sighed. Xiao Yi is so skilled. With this serious injury, it's impossible for her to recover her previous skills in the future. Even if she didn't injure her bones, injuring her tendons would be enough to cripple her martial arts. It would be impossible for her to continue being Hua Xiaoheng's personal secretary. Zhou Qiyuan hesitated for a long time. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng had taken the initiative to speak, he slowly said, Major General Hua, I have a suggestion. Can you tell me what you would do if you wanted to kidnap Nianji from our hands? This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1433, What Would You Do? A reminder to everyone for their monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 8 o'clock tonight, the monthly votes would be 2,000 plus updates. Moi. Chapter 1445. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him. Zhou Qiyuan was expressionless. Among the four of them, Yin Shixiang looked like he was about to kill someone. He couldn't wait to sacrifice someone. Although Zhao Liangzi tried his best to hold it in, the tears in the corners of his eyes still revealed his nervousness and uneasiness. He was originally the weakest of the four of them, but after Bai Shuang's death, he had truly become stronger. Hua Xiaoheng should have been the calmest, most ruthless of them all. However, because Gu Nianji was the one who had been kidnapped, his calmness was only on the surface. No one knew that just 5 minutes ago his mind was still in a mess. Therefore, the calmest person was Zhou Qiyuan. Hua Xiaoheng calmed down and looked around the living room. He then looked in the direction of the door and narrowed his eyes as if he understood what Zhou Qiyuan meant. He nodded and slowly walked to the door. He stood in front of the elevator and said, If it were me, I would have set up an ambush in this building a few days in advance. As he spoke, he looked up at the stairs. If he remembered correctly, Gu Yanran used to have an apartment upstairs. However, this apartment should have been taken back by Gu Nianji. The door card had also been changed, but no one lived in it. Therefore, those people knew that there was an empty apartment in this building. He walked over from the elevator door and stood at the door. He said, Then I will first cast an electronic shield to disable all the electronic equipment here. As Hua Xiaoheng spoke, he continued walking forward. Then I will break the surveillance camera at the door. At this time, the people inside should have noticed that there is someone outside. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi quickly stepped aside and watched Hua Xiaoheng walk to the door alone. He pulled out his gun and aimed it at the lock at the door. I will ring the doorbell first. If the people inside don't fall for it, I will shoot the lock. Gu Nianji's door card had been specially processed, so it wasn't easy to forge it. However, as long as the electronic shield was cast, there would be a 10-minute time difference. It would be enough for them to break the door lock with one shot. Hua Xiaoheng pushed the door open and walked into the room. He was completely immersed in the scene. The people inside will definitely resist and hide at the same time. I will shoot anyone who resists. At this point, he paused and looked at Zhou Qiyuan. Why didn't they kill Xiao Yi? They only seriously injured her. All those shots hadn't even broken her bones or punctured her arteries. Any one of them could have made Xiao Yi's situation 10 times worse, but they didn't do that. They only disintegrated her combat power. Zhou Qiyuan nodded and said slowly, Generally speaking, we should kill Xiao Yi first and then take Miss Gu away. This was probably the only thing that did not make sense. Xiaoheng walked to the portrait of Xiao Yi lying in the middle of the room and continued, Nianji should have been hiding in. He looked at the bedroom because that was the only place he could hide in a hurry. He couldn't say anything else. Zhou Qiyuan continued on his behalf. The criminal must have used Xiao Ye's life to threaten Miss Gu. He must have shot Xiao Yi so many times to intimidate her. Nianji is so kind. How could she watch these people kill Xiao Yi in front of her? Yin Shixiang shook his head. This silly girl definitely couldn't help it and came out herself. Actually, as long as she held on for 10 minutes, she might not be taken away. However, if she really lasted for 10 minutes, Xiao Yi would definitely die. Thinking about it carefully, this kind of choice was too cruel for Gu Nianji and Xiao Yi. Zhao Liangzi whispered, they didn't kill Xiao Yi, they just tortured her. Seems, they seemed to know Nianji very well. They knew that she wouldn't hide and watch them kill Xiao Yi. Xiaoheng put his hands behind his back and didn't say a word. The lines of his jaw were tight like a sculpture. He was exquisite and handsome, but there was no vitality or vitality. All of his emotions seemed to be buried in an unfathomable black hole, and no one could see through them. Zhou Qiyuan walked around the portrait of Xiao Yi on the carpet and said, did you see that? There are no footprints on the ground at all, which means that they have very good anti-reconnaissance abilities. Our professionals have used equipment to check, and we really can't find any footprints other than Xiao Yi and Miss Gu here. We don't even know how many people there are. Yin Shixiang crossed his arms and looked at the bullet marks on the window. That's not surprising. When we go on missions, we also use special plastic covers to cover our shoes. For example, that was what they did when they went to Japan's Shimizu Temple to deal with Yamaguchi Yoko. They still hadn't found out who the murderer was. That's right. Zhou Qiyuan looked at Hua Xiaoheng again. Major General Hua, can you tell? Their modus operandi. Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, I can tell. Their modus operandi is exactly the same as ours. This case seemed to be the work of the Special Operations Forces. If Hua Xiaoheng wasn't the commander of the Special Operations Forces and the three people around him were absolutely trustworthy, he would have really suspected that someone from the inside had betrayed them. However, it was still the same thing. If it was really someone from the inside, Gu Nianji would have had countless opportunities to be kidnapped without anyone noticing. There would have been no need to wait until today, and there would have been no need to leave such a bloody scene. It was like a demonstration. Therefore, this inference was illogical. If it wasn't done by the Special Operations Forces, then who did it? Could it be their foreign counterparts? Hua Xiaoheng had once been trained in Israel's Mossad. He had returned to China to form the Special Operations Forces, and the training materials were similar to the training methods abroad. Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang also thought of this. Yin Shixiang's thick eyebrows knitted together. Could it be those bastards from abroad who did it? Zhao Liangzi immediately took out his phone and entered the password. I have to check the information on the foreigners who have recently entered our country. Zhou Qiyuan crossed his arms thoughtfully. It looks like we have to activate the emergency measures abroad. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was grim. He immediately asked Zhou Qiyuan, did you block all the major customs ports and the roads out of the city? Zhou Qiyuan quickly said, as soon as I received the news, I immediately blocked the airport. In addition, today is the military parade and exercise. All the planes in the city are not allowed to take off before the exercise. The port is temporarily closed. I have set up checkpoints on the roads out of the city and are checking cars one by one. Hua Xiaoheng's expression relaxed slightly. He put a hand on Zhou Qiyuan's shoulder. Good job. Even if he had been in the capital at that time, this was the best he could do. As a leader, the happiest thing was that his subordinates could take charge of things independently and not have to worry about everything. Hua Xiaoheng breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Yin Shixiang at the same time. Go to the property management here and get all the surveillance videos from today. Qiyuan said that the surveillance was only blocked for 10 minutes. See if there are any clues before and after those 10 minutes. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang saluted and immediately went out to find the property management of the apartment complex to get the surveillance videos. Hua Xiaoheng waved at Zhao Liangzi. Little Zhe, come back with me. You check the information on foreigners entering the country. I'll report this to General Ji. He wanted to mobilize all the manpower and material resources to form an inescapable net so that the other party wouldn't be able to escape. When his phone rang, General Ji was on the military plane returning to the capital. He took it out and looked at it. It was Hua Xiaoheng's phone number. He quickly swiped it open and picked it up. He asked, Xiaoheng, what happened? General Ji only found out about Hua Xiaoheng's emergency private plane leaving the Rai City military base after the exercise. Hua Xiaoheng's serious and deep voice came from the other end of the phone. Xiao Yi was seriously injured and Yanji was kidnapped. What? General Ji cried out involuntarily. How could this be? What about your security measures? Hua Xiaoheng smiled bitterly. The other party is very familiar with our security measures. They even tore off the most secret GPS device on Yanji's body and threw it away. General Ji was shocked and angry. He almost blurted out, could there be another traitor? However, he remembered that he was still on the plane, so he swallowed the words and said, I'll be back soon. Hurry up and report to me. Hua Xiaoheng quickly said, Yes, Chief. I'm waiting for you at the airport. General Ji took a deep breath and began to comfort Hua Xiaoheng. Don't worry. Heaven helps a good person. After so many years, she only had an accident last year and it was abroad. Don't feel too guilty. The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's mouth twitched. He knew that it wasn't convenient for General Ji to speak, so he didn't say anything else. I'll wait for you to come back. Half an hour later, General Ji's military plane slowly landed at the imperial capital airport. Not long after, he got into the car that had come to pick him up. Hua Xiaoheng was waiting for him in the car. Secretary Chao drove personally, so General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng could immediately discuss the matter in the car. General Ji's face darkened. Tell me again what exactly is going on. Hua Xiaoheng told him about the situation in Gun Yanji's apartment and finally said, This is the situation. We have already ordered all airports, customs ports and roads to be sealed off. Only entry is allowed, not exit. General Ji nodded. That should be the case. I will immediately contact Speaker Long and Prime Minister Bai to inform them of this matter. After all, sealing off all airports, customs ports and roads involved too much. Previously, they could use the military parade and exercise to seal off the area for a few hours. But if it took any longer, they would need other reasons and cooperation from other departments. Hua Xiaoheng needed General Ji's support to obtain more authorization to deal with this matter. He and General Ji discussed and analyzed along the way. By the time they sent General Ji to the military compound, they had already drawn up the preliminary procedures. This matter will be handled according to the procedures we discussed just now. General Ji got out of the car and said seriously, Xiaoheng, you must calm down. If you can't control your emotions, I will send someone else to take over. Hua Xiaoheng's emotions had completely calmed down at this time. He quietly helped General Ji take his briefcase out of the car and said calmly, You worry too much. I'm very normal. There's no need to control my emotions. Really? General Ji glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. He saw that Hua Xiaoheng was indeed calm and collected. Hua Xiaoheng spoke calmly and acted calmly. He didn't look like he was panicking over the disappearance of his beloved. Of course, perhaps he was panicking inside, but no one could feel it at all. This kind of patience and self-control was not something an ordinary person could have. General Ji was even more satisfied with him. Okay. Go ahead and find her as soon as possible. Hua Xiaoheng said in a low voice, Yes, Chief. Watching General Ji enter the house, Hua Xiaoheng turned to walk to his private car. At that moment his phone rang. It was Yin Shixiang. Hua Xiaoheng quickly picked up. Did you find anything? Yin Shixiang was looking at the surveillance footage of Gun Yanji's apartment. Although there were 10 minutes of blank space, the footage before and after the 10 minutes were full of content. With Yin Shixiang's insight and analytical ability, he looked for half an hour and locked onto a black SUV that had entered and left the apartment complex. This is today's second monthly vote of 2000 plus updates. Chapter 1434, exactly the same. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Good night, sweethearts. Chapter 1446. Major General Hua. I found a black SUV that's very problematic. Yin Shixiang checked the footage of the black SUV frame by frame. The license plate number is very unfamiliar. I got the Traffic Control Bureau to check it. This license plate number was invalidated more than 10 years ago, and no one has used it until now. That's a fake license plate number. Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his eyebrows. Trace this car throughout the city. Yes, Chief. Maybe it wasn't this car. Maybe this car was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But they had no other target now, so they would definitely check this car first. Are there any other clues? Yin Shixiang shook his head. I've seen the surveillance video of the apartment complex, especially the time when Yanji disappeared. Everyone drove in and out and no one left the complex on foot, so I first ruled out the possibility that they left on foot. Huo Xiaoheng nodded and asked calmly, "What else?" His tone was calm and without a trace of ups and downs. Yin Shixiang sighed at Huo Xiaoheng's restraint and patience in his heart as he said, "Zhou Qiyuan controlled the city's traffic 15 minutes after the incident. We just have to see if this car appears in other places." Huo Xiaoheng looked calmly at the tree-lined path in front of him and gave a few orders. "Get the police station to mobilize grassroots police officers and members of the Security Joint Defense Team to investigate all registered hotels, inns and homestays. Now all guests need ID cards to check in. All guests with the wrong ID cards will be detained." This was to prevent the other party from kidnapping Gunyanji and hiding in a hotel before they could take her out. The imperial capital had been reorganized in the past few years. All the big hotels, including the hourly rooms on the street, were connected to the police. As long as they booked a room, the police would definitely be able to find out. Yin Shixiang's expression froze. "Yes, Chief." Huo Xiaoheng walked to the side of his private car. The orderly, Fan Jian, quickly walked over to open the door for him and let him in. Huo Xiaoheng continued, "Inform the Traffic Control Bureau and ask them to set up roadblocks on all the non-motorized roads out of the imperial capital. Tell them that they want to repair the roads and send traffic police to stand guard to check everyone who attempts to leave the imperial capital on foot." Huo Xiaoheng was so strict that Yin Shixiang could only be convinced. "Yes, Chief." When Huo Xiaoheng returned to the Special Operations Forces headquarters in his private car, Yin Shixiang had already conveyed Huo Xiaoheng's orders to the police station and the Traffic Control Bureau. At the same time, he had requested the Traffic Control Bureau to gather the city's traffic surveillance video. The bulletproof car stopped in front of his official residence, but Huo Xiaoheng didn't get out. He still sat in the back seat, his eyes unfocused as he quietly looked ahead. The orderly Fan Jian could tell that Huo Xiaoheng was in a bad mood and didn't dare to make a sound. He quietly got out of the car and stood guard in front of the car. The car's soundproofing was very good, completely isolating everything from the outside world. He could even hear the sound of his own heartbeat. In the quiet car, it was like the pendulum of a hypnotic clock. But he was not sleepy at all. Although he had not slept for 2 days and 2 nights, he still did not feel sleepy at all. His mood was like the hazy sky before the eruption of a volcano. It looked calm and peaceful, but there was lava rolling and shaking at the bottom of the mountain. Huo Xiaoheng closed his eyes and rubbed the space between his brows. This matter was not so simple. Although he had tried his best to plug every loophole he could, he was still 2 hours late. Zhou Qiyuan only paid attention to blocking the motorway and airport channels. What if the other party took Gunyanji out of the city on foot and then met them elsewhere? However, the other party only had 2 hours at most. Even if they walked, 2 hours wouldn't be enough for them to leave the imperial capital. Of course, even if the other party had already left the imperial capital on foot, it didn't matter. No matter where she went, he would always find her. The last time Gunyanji had disappeared in the German Alps, he didn't know at first. When he found out, she was already out of danger. Although he regretted and felt guilty, he had never tasted the feeling of worry. This time she had disappeared again. Only then did he know what it felt like to lose her. He never wanted to experience this feeling again in his life. After he found her this time, he would find a rope and tie her to his body. He would never let her walk alone again. He made up his mind and picked up his phone. He was about to ask Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi about the progress when he suddenly heard a few barks. He looked up and saw that the short-legged little Aku was jumping outside his car with all his might, trying to see who was in the car. Unfortunately, his legs were too short and he couldn't jump high enough. He had just popped his head out when he fell down. No matter how heavy Huo Xiaoheng's heart was, he was amused by the short-legged little Aku's appearance. He looked at his watch. He had actually been sitting alone in the car for 15 minutes. Huo Xiaoheng took a deep breath and pushed open the car door. The short-legged little Aku immediately came over with its tail between its legs. It sniffed around him, then raised its head and wagged its tail at him desperately. Its dark and watery eyes looked at him, then kept jumping up and looking into the car. Huo Xiaoheng knew who it was looking for. He bent down and rubbed little Aku's head. "It's okay. I'll be back soon." Huo Xiaoheng actually wasn't confident when he said this, but at this time he had to be confident. If even he lost confidence, how disappointed would the short-legged little Aku be? Gunyanji had been busy for the past 2 weeks and didn't have time to take care of it, so she left the short-legged little Aku at Huo Xiaoheng's official residence and instructed his orderly to take care of it for a few days. Seeing Huo Xiaoheng return, The short-legged little Aku must have thought that Gu Nianji had also come to pick it up. But she hadn't. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips, stood up and walked into the official residence. The short-legged little Aku didn't follow him in. It squatted down by the big iron gate at the door and stared fixedly in the direction of the path. Hua Xiaoheng turned around and glanced at it. He didn't call it and went into the house alone. He had returned to the imperial capital in the morning and had only just entered the house. He was still wearing the military uniform he had worn during the military parade and exercise in Rai City, but it was already drenched in sweat. After returning to his room and changing into a clean set of clothes, Hua Xiaoheng went to the 6th floor underground of the office building, where the central control room was located. Zhao Liangzi was looking at the information on foreigners who had recently entered the country. Yin Shixiang was already looking at the surveillance footage from the Traffic Control Bureau. What's new? He stood behind Yin Shixiang and asked. Yin Shixiang looked at the screen intently and said, "This black SUV was parked in the underground parking lot of Nianji's apartment. Judging from the total time, it was parked the day before the incident. It didn't disappear until the 10-minute surveillance footage went blank. In other words, the car wasn't parked in the underground parking lot 10 minutes after the incident." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Continue investigating." Then he walked to Zhao Liangzi's side and asked calmly, "Did you find any clues?" Zhao Liangzi shook his head and said in confusion, "There's nothing unusual. Judging from these people's visa applications, their backgrounds are normal. I didn't see any suspicious people." "Continue investigating." Hua Xiaoheng still said the same thing. At that moment Yin Shixiang made a new discovery. "Major General Hua, come and take a look at this." Yin Shixiang paused the surveillance footage. Hua Xiaoheng walked over. He crossed his arms and looked behind Yin Shixiang. An 18-wheeler truck appeared on the screen. Yin Shixiang pulled the progress bar forward, and the image changed. Now a black SUV drove into the camera. He pressed play again. At the busy intersection of the 3rd Ring Road, a low-key and noble black SUV drove quickly from the direction of Gu Nianji's apartment. At that moment, a huge 18-wheeler truck suddenly blocked in front of the camera. The scene seemed to freeze for a moment, then the truck left. 4 identical black SUVs suddenly appeared in front of the camera and drove quickly in 4 directions. Yin Shixiang quickly stopped the surveillance video and said excitedly, "Did you see that? Why did 4 identical black SUVs suddenly appear? There was only one before." Hua Xiaoheng's heart also skipped a beat. He said, "Replay the scene just now. Adjust the speed to the lowest possible." Yin Shixiang quickly replayed the scene at the lowest speed possible. The scene skipped almost every second. This time they saw it more clearly. From the moment the black SUV drove over to the moment the 18-wheeler blocked it, the scene was blurred and skipped for a few seconds. When the 18-wheeler left the scene and the 4 black SUVs drove in 4 directions, the scene returned to normal. Hua Xiaoheng frowned, but after watching it several times, it was the same result. "Check this 18-wheeler truck." Hua Xiaoheng put his hands behind his back. "And the 4 black SUVs. Can you see the license plate numbers?" "The 18-wheeler can be seen. The 4 black SUVs were just discovered." He zoomed in on the scene one by one and found the license plate numbers. The 2 of them were speechless. The 4 cars actually had the same license plate number. It was the fake license plate of the car that came out of Gu Nianji's apartment. "They're trying to mislead us," Yin Shixiang muttered. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He crossed his arms and stroked his chin with one hand. He muttered, "Put this car on the wanted list all over the country. Just use this license plate. Say that this car is suspected of a major criminal case. Ask everyone to report it and reward them handsomely." Yin Shixiang quickly sent the news to Zhao Liangzi. Zhao Liangzi went to contact the police to issue a wanted order. Hua Xiaoheng said again, "Check the 18-wheeler truck." Yin Shixiang quickly logged into the Traffic Control Bureau's car search system and used the truck's license plate number to check. This time it went smoothly. "I found it. The 18-wheeler truck is an oil transport truck from an oil company. The driver's name, address and contact information are all there." Hua Xiaoheng, he thought for a moment and instructed Yin Shixiang, "Contact the driver of the 18-wheeler truck first and bring him to the station for questioning. Then put the scene just now on the television station and the internet in your private name. Collect clues from the public at a high price to see if there were any witnesses in the vehicles that were present at the time." In other words, while they were putting the black SUV on the wanted list, they were also collecting clues to see what was going on with the sudden appearance of 4 identical black SUVs. The appearance of the 18-wheeler truck was too coincidental. Whether it was the time, angle, or direction, it just happened to block the surveillance at that time. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1435, Too Coincidental. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Tonight at 8 o'clock, there will be an additional update for the 50,000 Chidian dollars that your precious Xian Xian, the leader of the alliance, rewarded last August. Mwah. Chapter 1447. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang was so busy that he didn't even have time to drink water. According to He Xiaoheng's orders, he first contacted the police station and issued a warrant for the black SUV. Then he officially went to the Traffic Control Bureau to check the information of the 18-wheeler truck driver and gave it to the staff of the Special Operations Forces below to invite the driver to the Special Operations Forces 4T. Finally, the surveillance footage of 4 identical black SUVs suddenly driving out was posted online. At the same time, it was broadcasted on television and a large reward was offered for witnesses. Because it was the Special Operations Forces who took action, the police's wanted order was quickly sent out to the whole country. After the formalities with the Traffic Control Bureau were completed, the staff of the Special Operations Forces quickly located the 18-wheeler truck driver's location through the cell phone signal. He was playing poker with his colleagues in the rest area near the Imperial Capital Expressway. Because the Imperial Capital Expressway was suddenly blocked for a few hours, they couldn't go out before. Now they could go out, but there was a long queue at the exit of the expressway. The traffic police checked the cars one by one, moving slower than a turtle. His car was too big and it was at the back. He couldn't move for a while, so he could only go to the rest area to eat, drink and play poker. When the staff of the Special Operations Forces walked over with the 2 police officers in the rest area, he happened to touch a pair of kings and happily threw them out. Explode. Hands up. Don't move. The police had been very nervous today. As soon as they walked over, they heard someone say, "Explode." Their scalp went numb. They quickly pulled out their guns and aimed at the 18-wheeler truck driver. The truck driver was dumbfounded. He sat there motionless with a hand holding up his cards. He said with a sad face, "I was just playing cards. Brother police, are you serious?" The staff of the Special Operations Forces coughed behind him and asked, "Are you Jia Ting, the driver of the 18-wheeler truck with the license plate number XXXXX?" Jia Ting, the driver of the 18-wheeler truck, nodded quickly. I am. I'm a driver. Brother police officer, can you put down your gun? I'm really a law-abiding citizen." The corner of the police officer's mouth twitched. He sheepishly put away his gun and said, "Don't talk nonsense. What day is it today? You are exploding. Be careful of your image." Jia Ting breathed a sigh of relief and threw away his cards with a smile. He stood up and said to the 2 staff members in black uniforms behind the police, "How do I address you? Why are you looking for me?" The staff of the Special Operations Forces took out their work cards and showed them to Jia Ting. "We are staff of the Special Operations Forces. We would like to invite you to our base for a cup of tea and a chat." Jia Ting's face suddenly turned pale. He had never heard of this department before, but the name told him that it was a very powerful department. With a long face he said, "Comrades, I really haven't done anything bad. I'm an official employee of the oil company. I know that our oil company is hated by people and made you lose a lot of money in the stock market, but that has nothing to do with a small driver like me. It's all the leader's fault, it's none of my business." What was going on? The police couldn't take it anymore. He poked him on the back and said, "Don't think too much. We just want you to assist in the investigation. If you didn't do anything bad, why are you in such a hurry?" "Jia Ting, is it really just to assist in the investigation?" "Of course it's real." The staff of the Special Operations Forces smiled kindly. "If you weren't assisting in the investigation, we wouldn't have invited you for tea." Jia Ting's mood suddenly improved. "We will directly show you an arrest warrant and handcuff you." The staff of the Special Operations Forces made a gesture. Jia Ting's face darkened again. If that was the case, he might as well not have said it. He groaned as he followed the staff of the Special Operations Forces into their car. Before he got into the car, he even sent a video to his family and said, "Dad, Mom, Yinzi, the Special Operations Forces is looking for me to assist in the investigation. If you can't contact me in an hour, call the police immediately." The police's face darkened even more than his when they heard this. This person's vigilance was not ordinary. He was even worried that they were liars who would trick him into leaving. Go. Why don't you look in the mirror? What do you have that's worth being tricked by others? Is it because you have money or good looks? Or talent? You really don't know what you're talking about? The police muttered and closed the car door. Jia Ting was extremely embarrassed. Don't hit people in the face. Is there anyone who insults people like that? He poked his head out of the car of the Special Operations Forces and said loudly to the police, I don't have money, looks, or talent, but I have a kidney. What if they were tricking him into selling his kidney? The staff of the Special Operations Forces couldn't take it anymore. They forcefully closed the car window and cut off the divergent thoughts of this very imaginative 18-wheeler truck driver. The police outside were amused by him and shouted at the car window, so what if you have a kidney? It's obvious that you have a kidney deficiency. Other people wouldn't look for you even if they wanted to sell their organs. Fortunately, the car window was closed, so Jia Ting didn't hear what the police said clearly. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but the two staff members of the Special Operations Forces didn't say a word after they got into the car. They didn't speak again until they reached the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces. When they arrived at the interrogation room of the headquarters, Yin Shixiang personally came to question them. Hua Xiaoheng stood in the room next to the interrogation room and looked at the 18-wheeler truck driver, Jia Ting, through the one-way glass wall. He looked to be in his 30s, had a buzz cut and big eyes. He looked honest, but he was extremely talkative. Only Yin Shixiang could control him. Comrade, didn't you say you were going to treat me to tea? Is this your tea? He looked at the teacup with a look of disdain. What? You think it's not the Hong Pao for a cup of tea? Yin Shixiang looked at his information without raising his head. I'm sorry. Our unit's budget is limited. We only have tea stalks to boil with water. Jia Ting's eyes widened. No way? Didn't they say that your department is especially rich? Yin Shixiang almost choked on his words. He raised his head and glared at him. Who did you hear that from? You'll have to bear legal responsibility for spreading rumors. Hearing that he would have to bear legal responsibility, Jia Ting became honest. He wiped his mouth and said, Okay, may I ask why you were looking for me? You should have told me earlier. I still have to deliver the goods. This time I was delayed. You have to give me a proof that I didn't mean to be late, but that I was assisting the police in their investigation. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. Yin Shixiang got back to the point. Let me ask you, where were you at around 9 o'clock this morning? Jia Ting thought for a moment. 9 o'clock? I think I just drove to 3rd Ring Road? Yes, it should be 3rd Ring Road. What? Look at this video. Yin Shixiang played the video. Can you explain how these 4 cars came out at that time? From your angle, you should have seen it very clearly, right? Jia Ting watched the video for a while and was puzzled. He said, How would I know? There were so many cars at that intersection. How would I know where they came from? You really don't remember? It's not that I don't remember. I really didn't see it. Jia Ting took out his phone. I was talking to my family at the time. You can look at the call record on my phone. Look at the time on the video. I was on the phone. Yin Shixiang took the phone expressionlessly and said, It's illegal to talk on a phone while driving. Oh, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Jia Ting wiped the sweat off his forehead and kept apologizing. Yin Shixiang looked at his phone. At the time shown on the video, the driver was indeed on the phone. Therefore, he was multitasking at that time and might not have seen how the 4 cars came out. Yin Shixiang threw his phone back and placed his hands on the square table in front of him. He said, Think about it carefully. Did you really not see it at all? Even if you were on the phone, don't you truck drivers always look around and listen in all directions? Jia Ting scratched his head and thought about it carefully for a while. He hesitated and said, Actually, there was indeed something wrong at that time. It would have been better if you didn't say it. Since you said it, I'll say it. I don't know if you believe me or not. Yin Shixiang bowed over with a very kind expression. Tell me. I'll see if it's worth believing. Jia Ting held his hands and felt a little uneasy. He lowered his eyes and said, I remember that something was wrong at that time, but I'm not saying that I saw these 4 black cars. Then what is it? You know, we drive big trucks and often travel through the night. It's common for us to be sleepy during the day. But at that time my head shook. It wasn't sleepy, but it was a sudden pain, so I stepped on the brakes. This should be the minute when the 18-wheeler truck suddenly blocked the video surveillance. Yin Shixiang was excited. A sudden headache? What kind of headache? It's like someone pricked my head with a needle. Jia Ting rubbed his hands and smiled fawningly. But I'm fine soon. It doesn't hurt anymore. If you hadn't shown me this surveillance video, I would have almost forgotten about it. This is the second reward for today, Chapter 1436, Almost Forgot. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. The 50,000 Qidian coins reward for your baby Xian Xian, last August has been delivered. Moi. Chapter 1448. Yin Shixiang perked up and asked in detail. Which part of your head hurts? How long did it last? What happened after the pain? Jia Ting answered one by one. After Yin Shixiang recorded it down, he asked again, but there was nothing of value. He pushed the conversation record over and said, "Thank you for your cooperation. To be on the safe side, we also need to conduct a lie detector test on you. Please sign here." Jia Ting panicked. "Huh? No way. I'm not lying. I swear I'm not lying. Why do you need a lie detector test? What are you afraid of if you're not lying?" Yin Shixiang's face was stern. "Are you really hiding something?" "I am hiding something. I didn't have a sports car last night. I went to get a room with someone yesterday." Jia Ting was about to cry. "You won't tell my wife, will you?" Yin Shixiang was so angry that he laughed. He slammed the table and shouted, "If you don't tell the truth, I'll tell your wife. Go to the lie detector test." 15 minutes later, Jia Ting, who had been made to cry by the lie detector and wished he could confess all the bad things he had done since he was young, was helped out of the lie detector room. He cried so hard that his mental state was worrying. The Special Operations Forces had to find a psychiatrist to comfort him. Yin Shixiang placed the interrogation record in front of Hua Xiaoheng speechlessly and said, "Major General Hua, I'm afraid this person doesn't have any secrets. He just appeared in the wrong place at the wrong time." Hua Xiaoheng read through it, especially the part where Jia Ting said that he had a headache. He said, "What about his car? Have you searched it?" "Yes, it's a fuel truck. I checked it 3 times and even used x-rays. This is all the pictures. There's nothing unusual in the car. There's no compartment, no hiding person," Yin Shixiang said disappointedly. Hua Xiaoheng looked at all the pictures expressionlessly and knocked on the interrogation record. "Check his body and finally do an MRI." Yin Shixiang, although he didn't understand, he still followed Hua Xiaoheng's instructions and took the crying Jia Ting to do an MRI. An MRI, as the name implied, used the principle that the magnetic field of the nucleus could produce resonance. According to the different energy released, the electromagnetic waves emitted by special instruments were used to detect the location and shape of the human organs, thereby determining whether there were any lesions. The results of the MRI showed that Jia Ting's brain had just been disturbed by infrasonic waves. Because the frequency of ordinary infrasound was extremely low, the human ear could not detect it. However, certain frequencies of infrasound were similar to the vibration frequency of certain organs in the human body. They would resonate, and when the resonance was severe, it could directly cause death. This infrasonic wave, which was similar to the vibration frequency of human organs, was already an infrasonic wave weapon that was being developed in many countries' weapon laboratories. The infrasound received by Jia Ting was very similar to the vibration frequency of his brain, so he had a moment of intense pain in his head. However, because the time was very short, it did not cause any danger to his life. Yin Shixiang pointed at the MRI results and said, "Hua Xiao, the other party is very powerful. They even have a secondary wave weapon. It's not something an ordinary person can do, right?" Hua Xiaoheng remained silent. As far as he knew, there wasn't any country that could achieve this level of secondary wave weapons. It was as if they could retract and release them as they pleased. Of course, it was possible that some countries were conducting secret experiments, and they had not received any intelligence. This possibility could not be ruled out. However, this also further showed that the other party's weapons were too advanced. Similarly, just like with Xiao Yi, the other party did not kill the truck driver, Jia Ting. They only used him to cover for themselves. After Jia Ting's investigation ended, the Special Operations Forces received several calls from witnesses. They all talked about the sudden appearance of 4 identical black SUVs at the intersection. Witness A: "Yes, I was there at the time. I saw it. I was surprised. I even asked my wife, is this a show?" 4 identical black SUVs suddenly appeared. Special Operations Forces operator: "Did you see the people in the car? How many people were sitting in the car? What did they look like? What were they wearing?" Witness A: "1 person. I only saw a driver inside. He was dressed in black. They were all dressed in black, so I couldn't see his face clearly. You know, there were so many cars at the time and they were driving so fast. It was already good enough that I saw 4 people with my eyes." Witness B: I was on a tall building near that intersection. At that time I was looking through binoculars. Anyway, I was looking into the distance with binoculars. Then, 4 identical black SUVs appeared in my field of vision. Because they appeared too suddenly and too quickly, I remembered them. Of course, maybe it was because my field of vision was too narrow, so I didn't see clearly how they came over. Special Operations Forces operator, did you see the people in the car? How many people were sitting in the car? What did they look like? What were they wearing? Witness B. I'm standing so high. How can I see the people in the car? Witness C. I saw it. My car was even scraped by one of the black SUVs. By the way, comrade, if you find this car, can you give me the driver's contact information? I want to ask him for compensation. Special Operations Forces operator, did you see the people in the car? How many people were sitting in the car? What did they look like? What were they wearing? Witness C. One person. I saw only one person in the black SUV wearing black clothes. If you find him, you must let me know. I want to ask him for compensation. After summarizing the testimonies of all the witnesses, they came to the conclusion that there was only one person in the 4 black SUVs that could be seen on the surface. The 4 people were all wearing black clothes, which should be some kind of uniform. So, was Gu Nianji hidden in the car, or was she not in the car at all? Could it be that these 4 cars were actually all a cover? After an entire day of searching, the trail of the large truck and the black SUV seemed to have reached a dead end. Time passed minute by minute, and there was no light or hope in front of them. They had no choice but to grab onto this cover. Because even if it was a cover, Hua Xiaoheng knew that he could only continue investigating. Before he found these 4 cars, he couldn't treat them as a cover. In other words, the other party had dug 4 traps for him. He knew that they were traps, but he had no choice but to jump into them. Because what if one of them wasn't a trap? He couldn't afford to pay the price and consequences of a wrong judgment, so he had no choice but to jump. Continue to track these 4 cars and increase the bounty. I'll personally make up for the shortfall. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand and gave the order calmly. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang wrote it down and sent another memo to the police. Everyone worked nervously. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Zhou Qiyuan called. Major General Hua Xiaoye's surgery is done. He stood at the door of the operating theater and looked at Qin Lai, who had just come out of the operating theater. He reported the results to Hua Xiaoheng. After more than 10 hours of surgery, Qin Lai was exhausted and weak. He just wanted to collapse on the sofa and drink a mouthful of coffee to refresh himself. He waved his hand at Zhou Qiyuan and said weakly, "It's not bad. The fracture in her right wrist has been fixed. She still needs rehabilitation. The gunshot wound on her left wrist shattered her wrist, and the bullet was removed. Although it wasn't a fatal wound, her left wrist was crippled. Xiao Ye's right wrist had been broken, but her left wrist had been shattered by the other party's gunshot." How serious is it? Zhou Qiyuan frowned and looked at Qin Lai. Is she completely crippled or? Qin Lai sighed and shook his head. She's not completely crippled, but it's true that she can't use her strength. Fortunately, she's not left-handed. Otherwise she would really be finished. Her right hand was only fractured. As long as she recovered, she would have no problem shooting. However, she couldn't use her left hand, which would also affect her marksmanship because her sense of balance was a problem. Anyone who had fired a gun before knew that if there was a problem with her sense of balance, it was impossible for a sharpshooter to appear. What about her arms and legs? Zhou Qiyuan still remembered the many wounds on Xiao Ye's body. They were bleeding profusely. The bullets from those wounds have also been removed. Thank God the other party's bullets were intact and didn't shatter into pieces. Qin Lai wiped his face. However, although her bones weren't injured, the damage to her muscles was very serious. Everything still depends on her recovery. It's hard to say now. Qin Lai leaned against the wall and walked out step by step. Moreover, she lost a lot of blood and hasn't woken up yet. When he returned to his office and sat down, Qin Lai's face was blank. Xiao Yi was his cousin. Seeing his cousin injured like this, Qin Lai felt extremely sad. Before the surgery just now, he almost declined because he was worried that his emotions would be unstable and something would go wrong. However, after checking on Xiao Ye's injuries, he still planned to do it himself. Because the injuries were too serious, he didn't trust anyone else to take over. After the surgery, Xiao Yi was transferred to the intensive care unit. Zhou Qiyuan informed Xiao Ye's parents. General Xiao of the General Assembly and Director Qin of the Military Academy. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Qin Lai rested for 2 hours. He got up and was writing a medical report in his office when the door to the office was pushed open. He looked up and saw his aunt Xiao Ye's mother. Director Qin of the military academy rushed in with red eyes. Behind her was General Xiao. General Xiao looked relatively calm, but his expression was very ugly. Whose daughter had been beaten up to such a state? His expression was not good. Qinlai, how is Xiao Ye's condition? Is she really crippled? Director Qin had just gone to see Xiao Yi in the intensive care unit. Seeing her daughter, who had been alive and kicking and quarreling with her a few days ago, now lying in an oxygen mask on the verge of death, Director Chen's heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. In Qinlai's office, the elegant and virtuous Director Chen leaned against General Zhao's shoulder and sobbed softly. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1437. Remind everyone of your monthly votes and recommendation votes. The monthly votes for the evening had been increased to 3,000 in advance. Moi. Chapter 1449. General Xiao comforted his wife as he looked sadly at Qinlai. He said carefully, "Little Qin, I've never begged you for anything in all these years. But this time I'm begging you. Use your best techniques and methods to save my daughter. She is not only my daughter, but also a precious talent of the country." Qinlai hung his head awkwardly. "I've tried my best. Now we need to see the results of the follow-up rehabilitation." As they spoke, the door to Qinlai's office was pushed open. Wu Xiaoheng stood at the door. Seeing that General Xiao and Director Qin were here, he stood at the door and did not come in. Did I come at a bad time? He knew that Xiao Yi and Qinlai were cousins. Xiao Ye's mother was Qinlai's aunt. It was obvious that the relatives were having a conversation, and he didn't want to get involved. General Xiao turned around and saw him. He hurriedly said, "It's okay. We were just talking about Xiao Ye's situation." As he said this, he pulled Director Qin to stand up. President Qin wiped her tears with the tissue Qinlai had given her and nodded at Wu Xiaoheng. Qinlai said, "My aunt and uncle are asking about Xiao Yi. Major General Hua, are you also here to ask about Xiao Yi?" As soon as the surgery was done, he knew that Zhou Qiyuan had called Wu Xiaoheng to report Xiao Ye's injury. Wu Xiaoheng grunted. "I just finished work over there, so I came over to see how Colonel Xiao is doing." Qinlai sighed and glanced at General Xiao and Director Qin. His gaze returned to Wu Xiaoheng and he said expressionlessly, "It's not very optimistic. Although his life isn't in danger, it's impossible for him to recover to his previous state." As he spoke, he recounted Xiao Ye's injuries. "The bullets have all been removed. They didn't injure her bones, but they did a lot of damage to her muscles. The bones of her left wrist are shattered. It's impossible for her to recover. He couldn't even carry heavy objects in the future." Wu Xiaoheng knew Xiao Ye's skills very well. He pursed his lips. "Thank you, Qinlai." Qinlai nodded. "I'll do my best. It's my duty." The people in the room were silent for a while. Director Qin stood beside General Xiao and murmured. Xiao Yi entered the military academy at the age of 17. She had only been there for 2 years when she heard Hu Xiao's speech and was determined to join the special forces. After that, she left home. In these 10 years she almost never came back. I thought that she had sacrificed her life for the country. Not only did she come back alive, but she also brought back a large amount of information. Her military rank also rose again and again. She became a colonel before the age of 30, and she was even a colonel in the combat forces. Her rank was many times higher than that of a civilian colonel. General Xiao also said in a low voice, "I am proud of my daughter." A treasure that had been lost and regained suddenly became incomplete. The impact of this regret was sometimes even more painful than losing it completely. Director Qin leaned against his chest and began to cry silently again. Wu Xiaoheng stood beside them and said calmly, "Don't worry. The Special Operations Forces will not give up on any soldier. We will do our best to save her." President Qin stopped sobbing and was quiet for a while. She lowered her head and took out her phone. She didn't look at Wu Xiaoheng but spoke to him. "Major General Hua, is there really no other way? My Xiao Yi is a very ambitious person. Back then she ignored our objections and insisted on joining the newly established Special Operations Forces. She risked her life to complete missions for the country and made so many contributions. Let's not talk about the face of her contributions, just look at how loyal she is to you and how she risked her life for your fiancé." General Zhao's heart skipped a beat and he quickly stopped her. "Stop talking. Xiao Ye's protection of Miss Gu is a mission given to her by the organization. What are you saying?" President Chin gripped her phone even tighter and her mind was in a fierce struggle. She didn't know if she could succeed, but since someone said that Hua Xiaoheng had a way to cure Xiao Yi without leaving any sequelae as a mother, could she just let it go? After thinking about it, President Chin raised her head and looked at Hua Xiaoheng with her red and swollen eyes. It was a mother's sorrowful and pleading gaze. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't ignore it, nor could he. His body stood even straighter as if there was a steel pillar supporting his spine. Major General Hua, I'm begging you? President Chin took a deep breath and stared into Hua Xiaoheng's eyes. She enunciated each word clearly. I heard that you have special resources that can help my daughter recover from her injuries. I hope that you can use these resources on my daughter. Hua Xiaoheng and Chen Lai looked at each other quickly and then looked away. Hua Xiaoheng took a step back and said calmly, President Chen, don't be like this. I said that as long as we can do it, I'll definitely get Chen Lai to think of a way. But you have to be mentally prepared. After all, Xiao Ye's injuries, those physical injuries couldn't be reversed and recovered. At least with their current medical standards, they couldn't do it yet. President Chen let out an ah and looked extremely disappointed. Major General Hua, are you really unwilling? General Xiao held her arm and sighed. Don't try to trick me. Let's just tell Major General Hua and Little Chen the truth. President Chen gripped her phone even tighter. Major General Hua, don't think too much. When you become a parent in the future, you'll understand how we feel. As parents, they can really do anything for their children. General Xiao shook his head. Actually, it's like this. He reached out to take the phone from President Chen's hand, but President Chen wasn't willing. She kept shaking her head and muttered, Don't say it, it won't work if you say it. Forget it. We're all soldiers. We don't do such crooked things. He forcefully took the phone from President Chen's hand and opened it to Hua Xiaoheng. Look for yourself. You'll understand why Xiao Ye's mother said that. Hua Xiaoheng was actually mentally prepared, but when he looked down and saw a text message on President Chen's phone, his heart sank. On President Chen's phone, someone had sent her a text message an hour ago. Kind person, President Chen, your daughter's injuries can be healed as long as Major General Hua is willing to help you. He has special resources that can help your daughter recover. Hua Xiaoheng's hands trembled slightly, and the lines of his jaw were extremely firm. He had never expected that someone would send such a seemingly kind but actually extremely vicious text message. President Chen looked at Hua Xiaoheng eagerly. Major General Hua, I beg you. Hua Xiaoheng suppressed the rage in his heart and said calmly, President Chen, do you know the person who sent this text message? President Chen shook her head. I don't know him. This phone number is from Sea City. We're not familiar with each other. Hua Xiaoheng forwarded the text message to his phone and handed it back to President Chen. So, do you believe him or me? What do you mean? President Chen and General Xiao looked at each other in confusion. Hua Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and said calmly, I said that I would use the best resources of the Special Operations Forces to save Colonel Xiao. Isn't that enough? But you also said that she might not be able to recover. President Chen was very persistent in hoping that her daughter could recover to the state before she was injured. But this person said that you have a way. That's what I said. Do you believe the strangers sowing discord, or do you believe me? Hua Xiaoheng stood beside Chen Lai calmly. Chen Lai lowered his head and returned to his desk. He looked at the computer expressionlessly. You mean you don't have special resources to help my daughter recover? President Chen suffered a heavy blow and couldn't even stand steadily for a moment. General Xiao quickly supported her with a serious expression. I think so too. Someone wants to use such an ambiguous text message to sow discord in our team. Major General Hua, don't worry. We won't be fooled by such nonsense. I believe that with General Xiao and President Chen's status and wisdom, they won't be fooled by such a person. Hua Xiaoheng leaned against Chen Lai's desk and blocked Chen Lai's view. He said calmly, if he really thinks that I didn't use the resources to save Colonel Xiao, let him confront me face to face. He doesn't dare to come out and confront him. He sneakily sends text messages behind his back and uses ambiguous words to mislead others. This kind of behavior is not what a gentleman would do. This is today's second monthly vote of 3,000 plus updates, Chapter 1438, Not What a Gentleman Would Do. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Moi. Chapter 1450. Hua Xiaoheng spoke so decisively and left no room for doubt. Director Qin and General Xiao were actually persuaded by him. After recovering from the shock, confusion, and grief, Director Chen felt very ashamed of his actions. She quickly apologized to Hua Xiaoheng. Major General Hua, I was being presumptuous just now. I was confused for a moment. I didn't believe it at first, but when I went to the ICU and saw Xiao Ye's condition, I couldn't control myself. It's all right, you're not wrong. Hua Xiaoheng comforted President Qin gently. The ones who are wrong are those who take advantage of people's predicaments and play with people's hearts to sow discord. It's good that you've thought it through. President Chen's tears flowed again. Major General Hua, Xiao Yi has suffered such a serious injury this time, and there's no way for her to recover. I think that when her condition stabilizes, she should transfer. Let's wait for Colonel Xiao to recover before you decide this. Hua Xiaoheng didn't agree, but he didn't refuse either. Don't be too sad, you two. Take care of yourself. Colonel Xiao is still young. Even if he is transferred to another place in the future, he will still have a bright future. Hua Xiaoheng's words gave General Xiao and Director Chen a new perspective. Thinking about it this way, it didn't seem too bad. In short, his daughter's life wasn't in danger and she wasn't crippled. She just couldn't rush to the front line like a man to do those dangerous missions. His mood improved along with his mind. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise? The two of them thought it through and didn't force it. They supported each other and left. When they reached the door, Chen Lai poked his head out from behind Hua Xiaoheng and suddenly said, Auntie, don't be too sad. You can't trust anyone else, but you have to trust me, Chen Lai. You know what I'm capable of. Maybe I can help Xiao Yi recover. This has happened before in the medical history of the world. Child, you only know how to make your aunt happy. Director Qin turned around and shook her head at Chen Lai with a wry smile. After Director Qin and General Xiao left, Hua Xiaoheng sat on the sofa in Chen Lai's office. He took out his phone and began to search for the phone number that had texted Director Qin. It was a phone number that looked very normal. Judging from the first few digits, it should be a phone number that belonged to C City. He traced it all the way and found that the phone number belonged to a small repair shop in the urban-rural fringe of C City. Hua Xiaoheng immediately ordered the people from the C City Special Operations Forces to rush to the repair shop that very night, but to no avail. Because this small repair shop had been vacant for half a year, the phone inside happened to be out of service a few days ago due to unpaid bills. When Hua Xiaoheng saw the message, he immediately understood that someone had hacked into the telecommunications system and used the repair shop's phone number to send a message. As for who sent it, it was difficult to find out. There were billions of people in the world. Would they be able to find out? He put the phone back and got up to leave. Chen Lai had been silent when Hua Xiaoheng had searched for the number that had sent the text. When he saw that Hua Xiaoheng was about to leave, he finally said, Hua Xiao, are you a gentleman? Hua Xiaoheng looked down at him. Is this the first day you've met me? Chen Lai shrugged bitterly. I knew you weren't a gentleman. Hua Xiaoheng ignored him and continued walking towards the door. Chen Lai stopped him again. Hua Xiao, can't we talk? Hua Xiaoheng stopped at the door and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He said calmly, what's there to talk about? Do your best to save Xiao Yi. How much she can recover will depend on her luck. Chen Lai gritted his teeth and slammed the table. He rushed out from behind his desk and boldly said to Hua Xiaoheng, do you know what I'm talking about? If you pretend not to know, I'll take it that you're agreeing. Hua Xiaoheng didn't turn around, but he didn't make a sound. Chen Lai's office was silent for a moment. Outside was the long corridor of the medical building. In the dead of night there was no one. Hua Xiao, no matter what ulterior motives the person who sent the text message has, there's one thing that's right. We might really have the resources to help Xiao Yi recover. Chen Lai hesitated for a moment before saying it. He stood up and closed the office door tightly. He then turned off the surveillance cameras and lights in the office. In the darkness, Hua Xiaoheng silently lowered his head. He lit a cigarette with a lighter and took a slow puff. Chen Lai stood beside him and looked at the firework in his hand. His voice became even softer. Hua Xiao, think about Xiao Yi. She's only 29 years old and has worked for the Special Operations Forces for 10 years. You can save her. Hua Xiaoheng was expressionless. He said calmly, the person who can save her isn't me. I know. It's Nianji. Chen Lai put his hands in his pockets and stood behind Hua Xiaoheng. He enunciated each word clearly, I want to beg you to use Nianji's bone marrow sample to save Xiao Yi. I know that Nianji's genes have a powerful repair function. I used the genes extracted from her bone marrow to save your mother. He finally said it. Hua Xiaoheng held the cigarette in his hand and stopped smoking. He was silent for a long time before saying, you want to use Nianji to create a medical miracle again? Qinlai choked and shrank his neck as he stepped back. You know that's not what I meant. I just want to give it a try. I still have a sample of Nianji's bone marrow here. Then what do you mean? Wu Xiaoheng still didn't turn around. His voice was calm, but there was an indescribable pressure in his tone. Qinlai took another step back. He was almost out of breath. If there's one, there'll be two. If there's two, there'll be three. Qinlai, you know very well that the situation this time will be the same as the time with Ms. Song. The last time it was with Song Jining, it was to repair her genes. Xiao Yi, on the other hand, wanted to directly repair her limbs. The two were fundamentally different. Although they all knew that Gu Nianji's self-healing ability was very strong, they weren't sure if this self-healing ability could be passed on to others like genes. If it succeeded, Qinlai and Wu Xiaoheng didn't dare to imagine what the consequences would be. Wu Xiaoheng's deep voice rang out in the darkness again. It was as if he was asking Qinlai, but also as if he was interrogating himself. If you use Nianji to help Xiao Yi recover, then more people will come to you in the future and ask you to help them recover. What are you going to do? There wasn't even a single case of Song Jining's illness in 10 million people. Therefore, even if they cured Song Jining, they could still use a medical miracle to cover it up. It was unlikely that they would encounter the same illness and need Qinlai to treat it again. However, Xiao Ye's injuries could be encountered by ordinary people. Broken bones, damaged limbs, and aging organs. If there was a treatment that could help you get rid of the above pain and recover, would you choose not to do it? Qinlai took a step back, speechless. In your heart, has Nianji always been a lab rat? Wu Xiaoheng asked lightly. His tone was filled with deep exhaustion and self-blame. Qinlai blushed a little, but he wasn't willing to be defeated by Wu Xiaoheng's question. He growled, of course not. Don't you know how I've treated Nianji all these years? However, he softened his tone and pleaded, but Xiao Yi is different. She was injured because of Nianji. If Nianji was here, she would definitely give up her bone marrow without hesitation. Yes. Wu Xiaoheng was expressionless like an ice sculpture. Just because she's kind and won't refuse, you can ask her to be a lab rat when you're in trouble and she has to be willing? Why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you take my bone marrow? It was my decision to let Xiao Yi protect Nianji, not Nianji's request. If you think that letting Xiao Yi protect Nianji and get injured is because you owe Xiao Yi a favor, then I'll pay you back. Qinlai glared at Wu Xiaoheng. What nonsense are you talking about? If your bone marrow was as effective as Nianji's, of course I'd ask you instead of her. But your bone marrow is useless. You can use it just because it's useful? Wu Xiaoheng finally turned around and looked at Qinlai. Have you really thought about the consequences of doing this? If this continued, the secret of Gu Nianji's physique would be revealed sooner or later. At that time she would really become a lab rat. So, you want to use Nianji's freedom in exchange for Xiao Ye's freedom, don't you? Wu Xiaoheng could see it very clearly, and because he could see it clearly, it was even more painful. He suddenly understood the sinister intentions behind the other party's moves. He had originally thought that they hadn't killed Xiao Yi because those people had shown mercy and wouldn't kill the innocent. Now he was sure that not killing Xiao Yi and even using a text message to inform Xiao Ye's parents was all for Gu Nianji. In order to expose the secret of her physique, even if she was found, she wouldn't be able to continue living among them like an ordinary person. Their goal was probably to completely deprive her of her identity as an ordinary person and her dignity as an ordinary person. They wanted to turn a living person into a lab rat that could be used as a rare commodity. But the problem was, just like the big pit with the 4 cars, Wu Xiaoheng realized that he had no choice but to jump in. Qinlai had made it very clear just now that he couldn't watch Xiao Yi lose the chance to be completely treated. Wu Xiaoheng felt that he wasn't much better than Qinlai, or even worse. Because he was Gu Nianji's lover, the person she trusted and relied on the most. However, he had to stab her ruthlessly. He really owed this girl too much. Wu Xiaoheng took a puff of his cigarette and asked calmly, how much of Nianji's bone marrow sample do you have? Qinlai rubbed his hands in embarrassment. Actually, there's not much left, and it's just a guess. I don't know if it will work on Xiao Ye's injury. After using it this time, will there be no more? Wu Xiaoheng turned to look at him. Qinlai nodded. He couldn't bear to do it either. He raised his hand and patted Wu Xiaoheng on the shoulder. There's only so much left. We need to train it and experiment it a little. Even if it works, it'll take 1.5 years, so don't think too much about it. I know what I'm doing. He scratched his head and continued, don't think too much about it. Actually, it might not succeed. You saw that the person who sent the text message was just testing. If it was really possible, he definitely wouldn't have said something ambiguous like, special resources. This was the first update of the day, chapter 1439, the consequences are serious. A reminder to everyone for their monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 8 o'clock in the evening, they would continue to repay the debt of last year's tips and updates. Oh, __. Oh, moi. Chapter 1451. Xiaoheng looked down at the cigarette between his fingers. In the darkness, he couldn't see or hear anything other than the cigarette between his fingers. When hearing and vision were limited, his mind became agile. This spark was like a prairie fire. Xiaoheng suddenly understood and said with certainty. Other than us, there are others who know about Nianji's physique. The person who kidnapped Nianji is among these people. Qinlai looked up abruptly. Huh? There are others? Then did they kidnap Nianji too? Xiaoheng sneered and took a puff of his cigarette. What do they want? Isn't that the same idea as you and I have? What idea? Qinlai stammered. Xiaoheng looked at Qinlai and asked, are you still playing dumb? Can you really guarantee that there won't be a future? You promised before, but you went back on your word when you met Xiao Yi. You can't guarantee it because the temptation is too great. If Nianji can really help Xiao Yi repair her limbs and we really save her in the future, can you hold back from looking for her if one of us is injured again? How much bone marrow can a person have? How long does it take to recover from a single draw? If the bone marrow cells don't work, will we have to start studying her other cells? Somatic cells, stem cells, reproductive cells? Gradually, in your eyes, she was no longer a person, right? Instead, she's a medicinal herb that can provide medical miracles. Qinlai was scared out of his wits when he heard this. He roared, stop talking. I won't. You won't? Xiaoheng sneered. Why have we tacitly protected this biggest secret about Nianji for so many years? It's so that she can grow up like an ordinary person and live among the masses. When this secret couldn't be kept, wouldn't it be the greatest tragedy for Gu Nianji? This is different. Qinlai struggled on his deathbed and said weakly, for us, it's our good wish to hope that Nianji can help others. Nianji has a choice and we won't force her. But if she falls into those people's hands, she can only be a lab rat. Do you think we can be like them? Xiaoheng stared in the direction of Qinlai's voice, his eyes sharp. Nianji really has a choice? Qinlai, in my opinion, this is moral blackmail. You're even more despicable than those people you look down on. These words were too harsh. Qinlai hugged his head and shrank into a corner. He silently thought about Xiaoheng's words, and cold sweat gradually broke out on his back. He used to think that he was different from Yi Zitan, but now it seemed like there really wasn't any difference. The only difference was that he had access to all kinds of resources through proper channels. Yi Zitan didn't have as many resources as he did, so she had to take the risk. Now he was facing the same situation as Yi Zitan. He had unknowingly walked down the same path as Yi Zitan. Do you understand? Xiaoheng let out a long sigh and threw the almost burnt-out cigarette into the trash can. We all made mistakes just now. We covet something that doesn't belong to us and we even want to act on it. Tell me, what's the difference between this and a gangster stealing and robbing a jewelry exhibition because he knows there's a treasure in it? Qinlai hit his head with his hand and tears flowed down his face. I was wrong. Major General Hua, I won't use Nianji's bone marrow. I will use my own abilities to save Xiao Yi. Before Nianji comes back, you better not touch her bone marrow sample, Xiaoheng said lightly. Xiao Yi's life isn't in danger, and she won't be disabled to the point of being unable to move. Her injuries can wait. You don't have to let her recover immediately. At the very least, they had to wait until Gu Nianji came back. They had no right to make decisions for her. The two of them remained motionless in the darkness as they calmed their turbulent emotions. After a while, Qinlai supported himself against the wall and stood up. He found the switch on the wall and turned on the light. The light chased away the darkness and both of them felt relieved. They had finally balanced their guilt towards their comrade in arms with their apology towards Gu Nianji. Everyone wanted to take shortcuts, but every shortcut had its own consequences. Qinlai took a bottle of mineral water and handed it to Xiaoheng. Drink it. You've sweated a lot too. Xiaoheng's summer clothes were drenched in sweat. Xiaoheng took the mineral water, unscrewed the cap and drank it in one gulp. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve and said calmly, let's go back to what I said just now. The other party sent a text message to Sao Discord. They wanted to kill two birds with one stone, but they also exposed their identity and purpose, allowing us to discover an important clue. This was probably something the person who sent the text message hadn't expected. What identity? Qinlai was puzzled. You know who it is? Does that mean you can find Nianji immediately? Hua Xiaoheng looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said calmly, "Of course not." Then what do you mean? Although we still don't know who it is, the scope has been greatly narrowed down. Qinlai? Think about it, how many people in this world know about Nianji's special constitution? Qinlai frowned and counted with his fingers. You, me, and Nianji's family, which is her father. No. Hua Xiaoheng put his hands behind his back and walked to the window of Qinlai's office. Gu Xiangwen doesn't know. He always thought that Nianji hadn't recovered from her illness. Don't forget, his last words before he died were all about guilt. That's right. I remember now. Qinlai wiped the sweat off his forehead. Then what's going on? I thought it was Gu Xiangwen. After all, he's so powerful. Hua Xiaoheng stretched out his finger. We can summarize all the suspicious points related to Nianji in chronological order. First, 7 years ago, Gu Xiangwen's plane was hijacked and forced to land in the Cape of Good Hope. He escaped with his wife using hypnosis and hid in his submarine, but in the end he didn't escape the Japanese torpedo. The submarine sank to the bottom of the sea for 7 years. Second, Gu Yanran said that Gu Nianji disappeared after learning about Gu Xiangwen's accident. She sailed her own boat out to sea and disappeared in the Caribbean Sea. Third, that year, Nianji was only 12 years old. She clearly disappeared in the Caribbean Sea, so why did she end up sitting alone in a car in the downtown area of Sea City in our country? Fourth, who brought her from the Caribbean Sea into our country? How did she enter our country? Because we couldn't find her entry records. Fifth, who was the driver of that car? Where did she go? Why did the car she was in suddenly catch fire and explode? Hua Xiaoheng looked at his 5 fingers and said thoughtfully, of course, the premise of these questions is that Gu Yanran didn't lie. If she lied, then the second and third points wouldn't be valid. Qinlai slapped his head and sighed. Oh my god, this Special Operations Forces is really not a job for humans. How good of a logical analysis and memory must be. Stop flattering me. Hua Xiaoheng was unmoved. But regardless of whether Gu Yanran lied or not, Nianji's illness must have been cured. So there's another person. At least there's another person who cured Nianji's illness. Maybe Nianji's special constitution has something to do with him. Qinlai's eyes widened. His round eyes were like 2 small lanterns behind the round lenses. Oh my god. You mean there's another person? Not only does this person know about Nianji's special constitution, but he might also be the person who cured her illness. That's amazing. That's amazing. Doesn't that mean he's a genius even more amazing than Gu Xiangwen? Qinlai spun around the office excitedly. No, this person is a real genius in medicine. I really hope I have the opportunity to get to know him. Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes. He didn't want to see Qinlai like this. He said calmly, this person, let's assume that this person exists. He cured Nianji's illness and knows about Nianji's special constitution. Then what? Will he kidnap Nianji? Will he use such a clumsy method to provoke us and try to expose Nianji's special constitution to the public? Qinlai was exhausted from spinning around and finally calmed down. He sat on his swivel chair and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He said in a low voice, no. Why do you think so? Qinlai began to speak viciously. First of all, if this person cured Nianji's illness and improved Nianji's constitution, then this person's ability is not on the same level as ours. It's even like the difference between a human and a gorilla. When have you ever seen a human be jealous of a gorilla? And show off his abilities in front of a gorilla? Hua Xiaoheng, Qinlai said angrily again, but the person who sent the text message is obviously not the person who cured Nianji. Because he isn't sure how far Nianji's special constitution can go. He's on the same level as us. This is the second reward update of the day, Chapter 1440, Finding a Clue. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. The 100,000 Qidian coins awarded by the leader of I Am Master Rashi, last August have been delivered for the first time. Oh, intersection. Oh, if you have monthly votes, vote now. During the double monthly vote period, 1 vote is equivalent to 2 votes. Moi. Chapter 1452. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it. You mean the person who sent the text actually had doubts about this? Qinlai nodded and said firmly, of course. If the other party was very sure, then they would have mentioned Gu Nianji's name directly. Wouldn't that have been more effective against you? That would have left no room for negotiation. So this kind of person, you say he's the person who cured Nianji? What a joke. At most, he's a person who covets other people's advanced medical skills. He's despicable, immoral, and wants to deceive the world. Chen Lai was addicted to talking and continued to talk to Hua Xiaoheng. Do you remember? I once said that Nianji had an old injury on her spine. That kind of injury is like a cat's scars caused by being thrown from a building multiple times. Hua Xiaoheng's expression changed slightly. He felt that he had found the right direction in a fog. Then we can be sure that the person who cured Nianji and the person who kidnapped her this time are two different groups of people. Before Nianji came to us, there should have been two groups of people familiar with her. One group is the person who cured her, so let's assume that this group is good people. The other group is the person who abused her and experimented on her. It's very likely that this group of people are the ones who kidnapped her this time. It's very likely. Chen Lai kept nodding, but his face quickly paled. If it's the second group, then wouldn't Nianji be back to being a lab rat? Chen Lai's heart tightened at the thought that those terrifying experimental methods might be used on Nianji again. He felt extremely ashamed that he had tried to use Nianji's special constitution just now. This test had baptized him from head to toe. That was how a person's spirit and awareness grew and improved through self-reflection and self-criticism. Hua Xiao, you must save Nianji quickly. Chen Lai's face was pale. She's not a child now. Hua Xiaoheng's feelings at that moment could no longer be described with words. It was like someone had taken a sledgehammer and placed his heart on a red-hot iron plate, then smashed it down again and again. It didn't matter if he was smashed into pieces, but please don't hurt the little girl he had spoiled growing up. Hua Xiaoheng's throat bobbed. He raised his hand to look at his watch. It was already midnight. 15 hours had passed since Nianji disappeared at 9 in the morning. The golden time for a missing person to be rescued was 24 hours after they went missing. In other words, they only had 9 hours of prime time left. It was dark outside the window, but Hua Xiaoheng's sleep-deprived brain was still working at high speed. Nianji, where the hell are you? Mentally and physically exhausted, he blacked out and fainted in Chen Lai's office. In the office building of the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces, Hua Xiaoheng woke up on the sofa in his office with a blanket covering his body. Zhao Liangzi was sitting on a single-seater sofa with a laptop on his lap. He was checking some information. Seeing that he was awake, Zhao Liangzi immediately said, Hua Xiao, you fainted in Dr. Chen's office. Dr. Chen had someone send you here. Hua Xiaoheng immediately looked at his watch. It was already 6 in the morning. He had slept for about 5 hours. Counting from the military base in Rai City, he had indeed not slept for 4 days. Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his temples. Yeah, how was it? How's the progress? Zhao Liangzi quickly said. We found 3 of the 4 cars. Hua Xiaoheng jumped up with an ugly expression. Why didn't you wake me up earlier? You haven't slept for almost 4 days. You have to rest. Zhao Liangzi sighed softly. Besides, they're all empty cars. It's useless to wake you up. Empty cars? Hua Xiaoheng lifted the blanket and got up. He walked into the small bathroom in his office to wash up. He hadn't slept for a few days and the stubble on his chin had grown. Zhao Liangzi stood at the bathroom door and reported to him. Yes, they're all empty cars. The car heading east was dropped off at the intersection of the highway. The license plate number is the same license plate number we saw. There's no one in the car. The car heading south has already left the imperial capital, but it was abandoned on the isolation belt by the side of the highway. There's no one in the car. The car heading west didn't go far. It was parked in the parking lot of a shopping mall. It was the first to be found and reported by the public. Of course, there's no one in the car. I've already asked someone to tow all 3 cars back. Hua Xiaoheng washed up and shaved his beard before saying, What about the car heading north? Zhao Liangzi was a little ashamed. This is the only car that has already escaped our search. They had rushed hard but still let the other party escape. In other words, the 4th car was too fast, and it was different from the other 3 cars because it had changed 3 different license plates along the way to pass through the Traffic Control Bureau's checkpoint. They didn't notice it at the time. Later, when they checked all the black SUV license plates that left the imperial capital, they found that there were 3 more scrapped license plates. Then they locked onto the target again. Hua Xiaoheng's hand paused as he looked at the mirror in front of him. You mean it has already left the imperial capital? Not only has it left the imperial capital, but it should have already left the border. Zhao Liangzi said with a pale face. Hua Xiaoheng threw away the automatic shaver and his expression darkened. Hurry up and chase after it. No matter where it goes, you have to chase after it. Yes, Chief. Zhao Liangzi quickly stood at attention and saluted. The car was heading north. There were 2 countries across the border, Outer Mongolia and Russia. Zhao Liangzi turned around to inform the Special Operations Forces field personnel in the 2 countries to take over the search. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was as dark as water as he walked downstairs. He wanted to personally check the 3 black SUVs. In the Special Operations Forces parking lot, 3 tall black SUVs were lined up majestically. Hua Xiaoheng asked someone to bring the short-legged corgi over. The other staff members stood far away and didn't follow him. In the empty parking lot, the first rays of dawn shone through the clouds. The tall man in military uniform stood beside a cute, short-legged little corgi. The scene was indescribably funny, but none of them could laugh. Go up and see if your mama has been inside, Hua Xiaoheng said expressionlessly. Fortunately, the staff members were far away. Otherwise, the people who heard him would have been shocked. The short-legged little Aku wagged its tail and ran towards the black SUV on the far left. Although they didn't have the key, it wasn't difficult for the people of the Special Operations Forces to open the door of a car. The doors of the 3 cars were already open. The short-legged little Aku leaped forward lightly and pounced into the car. It sniffed around the car and quickly turned around to get out of the car. It ran to the car in the middle, got out quickly and went to the car on the far right. In less than 3 minutes, it had finished checking the 3 cars and returned to Hua Xiaoheng's side, wagging its tail. Hua Xiaoheng squatted down and patted its head. The short-legged little Aku barked, wagged its tail and bit Hua Xiaoheng's sleeve. It was about to leave the parking lot. Hua Xiaoheng understood what it meant. There was no scent of Gun Yanji in the 3 cars. She hadn't even been in them. This meant that they were a cover. Hua Xiaoheng didn't even have the interest to check. Where was Gun Yanji? Could she really be in the 4th car? The 4th car that had already run out of the country? Hua Xiaoheng frowned. At that moment his phone rang. Hua Xiaoheng swiped it to answer. Zhao Liangzi's anxious voice came from the phone. Major General Hua, we just found the whereabouts of the 4th car. It went to Siberia, Russia. Was it the KGB who did it? Hua Xiaoheng hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. He didn't believe that the KGB had done it. If they knew the secret of Nianji's physique, it wouldn't have been so easy for the 2 of them to escape unscathed in Russia. Hua Xiaoheng had an indescribable feeling when he thought about his trip to Tunguska, Russia's Siberia. He frowned and remembered that Gun Yanji had gotten his private number from the KGB's second-in-command, Vladimir, and that his driver, Uncle Ivan, was Gun Yanji's good friend. Hua Xiaoheng remembered their phone numbers. Could he trust them? Hua Xiaoheng only hesitated for a second before quickly finding the driver, Ivan, and calling him. The call quickly connected and a series of harsh Russian words popped up. Hello? Who are you? Who are you looking for? Hua Xiaoheng paused and said in Russian, I'm Hua Xiaoheng, serious fiancé. The moment he mentioned serious fiancé, the driver immediately understood and quickly said, It's Major General Hua? Hello, why did you suddenly think of calling me? Where's Sirius? How has she been recently? I heard she's very busy? The series of questions obviously concerned Gun Yanji. Hua Xiaoheng took a deep breath and said, Where's Vladimir? Is it convenient for him to answer the phone? The driver was unhappy. Sirius is the best with me and she gave me the biggest red packet. What can't you tell me? Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, I can tell you, but I'm worried that you don't have the authority to help me. Tiske, tell me about it. The middle-aged driver almost patted his chest. See if I can help. Okay. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and said casually, You know, our military parade and exercise just ended, so I'm on a long leave. I want to take Sirius to Siberia for a trip, so I'm telling you. Sirius and I are driving our own cars into the country. Do we need to report to you? Oh, that's great. But I haven't been on leave recently, so I can't go see Sirius. The driver was extremely regretful. But you don't have to worry about entering the country. It's a small matter. I'll take care of it for you. Okay, thank you, Ivan. Hua Xiaoheng's voice was very relaxed, and the driver didn't hear anything different at all. He happily took the documents that Hua Xiaoheng had faxed over and went to complete the immigration procedures for him. With Hua Xiaoheng's identity, going to Russia for a private trip required the approval of the Russian KGB. Hua Xiaoheng used this method to go to Siberia in Russia because he didn't want Gun Yanji's kidnapping to become a hot topic in society. Although he didn't think Gun Yanji had been kidnapped by the Russian KGB, He had to be wary of others. He didn't want to attract the KGB's attention. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1441, I've done it for you. A reminder of everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 8 p.m., we'll continue to pay off the debt of last year's tips and updates. Oh, __. Oh, moi. Chapter 1453. After circling around the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the middle-aged driver, who was humming a song, bumped into Vladimir and Peter. Boss Peter, what are you doing here? The middle-aged driver chuckled and hid Hua Xiaoheng's immigration documents behind his back. Peter glanced in the direction where he was hiding them. Vladimir didn't notice at all and just replied, I should be asking you, what are you doing here? Is this where you came from? Haha, the weather is so good today. The middle-aged driver smiled and looked at the sky, then said, Major General Hua is on a long vacation. Sirius is coming to Siberia with him on a private road trip. I'm helping them with some immigration procedures. I just finished. I'll fax them back now. Hua Xiaoheng is on vacation? He's coming to our place for a private road trip? Vladimir frowned. Peter said softly, the Huaxia Empire has just finished their military parade and exercise. They should be on vacation, right? Vladimir's brows furrowed slightly, and he glanced at the middle-aged driver. All right, hurry up and send the completed procedures to them. Okay. The middle-aged driver ran away. Vladimir was both angry and amused as he watched the middle-aged driver's bear-like back run away like a rabbit. He and Peter went to the Ministry of Internal Affairs to do something, and when they came out, they remembered what the middle-aged driver had just said. He took out a cigar from his pocket, cut off the end of the cigar with a blade, and took out a lighter to light it. When the flame turned into a bright blue color, he brought the cigar closer and spun it on the bright blue color. The head of the cigar gradually turned black, and a grayish-white color appeared at the edges. There were even some scarlet sparks on the inside, and wisps of green smoke drifted out. Vladimir put the burning cigar in his mouth and took a big puff in satisfaction. He then exhaled the smoke in his mouth and closed his eyes to feel the remaining fragrance. Smoking a cigar was completely different from smoking. Peter stood quietly beside him, like a shadow that would never wake up. Vladimir quietly smoked half a cigar before saying, Go to Siberia and keep an eye on Hua Xiaoheng. I don't believe he has the time to come to Siberia for a road trip. Peter lowered his eyes and said calmly, accompanying his fiancée is understandable, right? In his heart, it will always be his country and his troops. I don't think a single Sirius can influence his decisions. Vladimir's expression was extremely puzzled. Accompanying a woman on a private road trip. Only that fool Ivan would believe such a thing. As Vladimir spoke, he took out his phone and sent Gunyenji a WeChat message. He asked her when she would come here to play. Gunyenji didn't respond. Vladimir sent another message to her button, but there was still no response for a long time. Vladimir chuckled. Peter pursed his lips. All right, I'll go take a look. Wait. Vladimir stopped him again. He lowered his head and took a few puffs of his cigar. He exhaled the smoke and carefully savored the sweet fragrance before saying, Can you keep an eye on him in secret and not let him find out? Peter thought seriously for a moment. I'll try. What if he finds out? He didn't seem very confident that he could hide from Hua Xiaoheng forever. Since you've been discovered by him, you should openly admit it. Anyway, when someone like him comes to our country, we have to send people to keep an eye on him. This time that idiot Ivan opened the back door. I hope nothing goes wrong. Vladimir had a bad feeling, and his eyelids were twitching violently. All right, then I'll be leaving. Peter nodded and turned to leave the Internal Affairs Department. Vladimir sighed deeply when he saw that there was no one around him. He missed Elena. He really regretted not confessing earlier. That way, the two of them would have had more memories so that he could savor them for the rest of his long life. Walking out of the Internal Affairs Department's main entrance, Vladimir looked up and saw the middle-aged driver poking his head out of the car to greet him. He had a cheerful face and was naturally optimistic. Seeing him like this, Vladimir's melancholy instantly disappeared. He stepped forward and kicked the car door, then got into the car and sat down. Drive. The middle-aged driver hummed a tune happily and said, I've already faxed the completed procedures. Major General Hua even thanked me. Vladimir didn't want to see his smug face, so he said coldly, Then have you asked Sirius? Did she reply to you? The middle-aged driver shrugged and said excitedly, No. She's been quite busy recently. She said she's going to form her own team. Isn't it great to be the chief lawyer consultant of the Senate? Vladimir. You even know about that? However, his mood improved a little, and he didn't stare at his phone anymore, waiting for Gu Nianji's reply. Hua Xiaoheng received a fax from the middle-aged driver. All the procedures had been completed. He immediately said to Yin Shixiang, "Prepare a private plane for me. I'm going to Siberia, Russia. Rent me a car at the airport." Yin Shixiang immediately went to arrange a private plane for him. Not long after, the plane roared into the blue sky and flew in the direction of Siberia. Hua Xiaoheng was still in close contact with Zhao Liangzi and the Russians on the plane, constantly paying attention to the progress of the car. Both satellites were tuned to the direction of Siberia and tracked with the image recognition system. 2 hours later, Hua Xiaoheng arrived at the Tunguska region of Siberia. The last time he had brought Gu Nianji from Moscow to this place to meet up with Song Jining. Half a year ago, a strange high-energy magnetic field had suddenly appeared here, attracting Russian and Huaxia scientists to flock over. However, the strange high-energy magnetic field had suddenly appeared and disappeared. The only gain was that the Huaxia Empire had obtained a large amount of data and was currently studying it intensely. After Hua Xiaoheng got off the private plane, he picked up the Russian Gaz off-road vehicle that he had rented in advance at the airport. The car had the typical characteristics of a Russian car. It looked big and black, but it was durable and had very good performance in the wild. Hua Xiaoheng was dressed like a wild tourist. The car was fully equipped, and he drove into the vast forest of Siberia alone. Major General Hua, the other party is already close to the Tunguska region of Siberia. Yes, the place you went to half a year ago. Zhao Liangzi contacted Hua Xiaoheng through the Nandu satellite communication and navigation system. He cooperated with the field personnel in Russia to guide the direction of the off-road vehicle. Hua Xiaoheng wished he could drive the off-road vehicle like a supersonic fighter jet and charge through the wilderness. If he could take a shortcut, he would never take a long detour. If he could walk, he would never stop. He sped all the way and finally arrived near the sinkhole in the Tunguska region of Siberia within an hour. Zhao Liangzi told him that the car had stopped at this place. Hua Xiaoheng was burning with anxiety. He drove the off-road vehicle at full speed. The last big rock was blocking the road. He didn't want to take a long detour, so he slammed on the accelerator and the entire car crashed into the big rock, knocking it away. The front of the car was only slightly scratched. Peter, who was following behind him, saw this and calmly stopped. He parked his car in the middle of the road and leaned against the car door alone. He took out a cigar and lit it. He put it in his mouth and took a puff. Then he exhaled white smoke and closed his eyes to savor the unique fragrance of the cigar in his mouth. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was solemn. He rushed to the front of the Tunguska sinkhole and slammed on the brakes. In the distance, the sky was clear and white clouds were blooming. There was water in the sinkhole reflecting the blue sky. It was quiet everywhere with trees and green grass. The black SUV quietly stopped at the edge of the sinkhole, forming a black silhouette that stung Hua Xiaoheng's eyes. Was there anyone inside? Was Nianji inside? Hua Xiaoheng had always been calm and collected, but at this moment, his palms were sweating. After a while, he let go of the steering wheel, pushed open the door and jumped out. He was wearing a hunter's uniform and a bulletproof vest. He held a gun in his hand and aimed it in the direction of the car as he walked over step by step. The car was parked horizontally at the edge of the sinkhole. It was facing the direction Hua Xiaoheng was coming from. He could see through the window. As expected, there was no one inside. Where was she? Where did she go? Hua Xiaoheng put on his infrared glasses and looked over again. These glasses could see inside the car through the body of the car. If someone was hiding inside, he would be able to see it without opening the car door. However, the infrared glasses showed that there was no one in the car. There was no one hiding anywhere, not even a suitcase. Hua Xiaoheng's face darkened as he observed his surroundings and walked over step by step. In his earpiece, Zhao Liangzi was reporting the pictures and news from the Nandu satellite communication system. Major General Hua, the satellite tracking shows that after the car stopped there, a person got out of the car and jumped into the sinkhole. I'll send you the pictures taken by the satellite. This was the second reward and update of the day, Chapter 1442, looking forward to reply. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommendation votes. The second update of the 100,000 Chidian coins that the leader of I Am Master Rashi had tipped last August has arrived. Oh, intersection. Oh. Dear friends, if you have monthly votes, please vote now. During the double monthly vote period, 1 vote is equivalent to 2 votes. Good night, dear friends. Chapter 1454. Jump down? Is there really only one person? Hua Xiaoheng was worried and continued to ask with a frown. This place was so big and he was only one person. It was impossible for him to conduct a carpet search, so he could only rely on the Nandu satellite communication and navigation system that had been tracking in real time. The photos taken by the Nandu satellite were already very high definition. Although they couldn't capture the person's face from 10,000 meters above, their height and figure could still be clearly seen. Zhao Liangzi understood what Hua Xiaoheng was thinking and quickly explained, "There's only one person. Judging from the figure, it's a man. It couldn't be Nianji, and it definitely couldn't be that person who pulled Nianji down with him." Hua Xiaoheng sighed, but he didn't feel relieved. He had chased them for thousands of miles. Although they were almost a day and night late, a plane was still faster than a car. He had still caught up to them. However, he hadn't expected the other party to jump into the sinkhole. Hua Xiaoheng knew exactly what was down there. It wasn't like he hadn't gone down before. Did he come back up after jumping down? Hua Xiaoheng spoke to Zhao Liangzi through his Bluetooth headset. As he asked, he raised his gun and walked towards the black SUV parked at the edge of the sinkhole. "No. Our satellites have been watching this place. No one can escape our satellite tracking if they climb up," Zhao Liangzi said firmly. He was also extremely worried. He wished that his eyes were on the surveillance camera so that he wouldn't miss a single frame. Hua Xiaoheng held his breath. When he was about to approach the car, he suddenly raised his gun and aimed. With two thuds, the sharp conical bullets of the silent pistol pierced into the black SUV's wheels. The tires immediately deflated like a deflated balloon. After walking over, he opened the car door and searched inside and out again. He even looked under the car, but there was no one. There was only one person. Did he really jump down? Hua Xiaoheng walked to the side of the car and looked down into the sinkhole. He wondered if he should go down and take a look. He wanted to see the person dead or alive. He understood this the best. Climbing a large rock at the edge of the sinkhole, he tried to land. The bottom of his feet was the soft soil at the edge of the sinkhole. It was dark and gloomy, and below was a dark blue pool. At that moment, the black SUV suddenly shook a few times. Hua Xiaoheng instinctively turned around to find that not only was the car swaying, but he was also swaying. Was it an earthquake? Before he could turn around, the edge of the sky pit suddenly cracked. It turned out that the sky pit had begun to collapse. Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat. He quickly used one hand to protect himself with the gun and the other to support himself with the big rock. But it was too late. Half of the sinkhole had already collapsed the last time the scientific community observed the data. This time, for some unknown reason, the entire sinkhole began to shake. The black SUV had been parked at the edge of the sinkhole. When the sinkhole began to collapse, it tilted to the side and slid down along with the mudslide that was rolling into the sinkhole. The SUV was almost smashing towards Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng quickly dodged to the side and brushed past the SUV that was sliding to the bottom of the sinkhole. After rolling for an unknown period of time, it was completely buried by the mudslide and could no longer be seen. Hua Xiaoheng tried his best to stabilize his body and clung tightly to the big rock at the edge. Just as he was about to get up, he realized that the ground under him was also beginning to crack and soften. Like a landslide, it began to fall. He tried his best to control his body and tried his best to crawl forward. However, the collapse of the sinkhole had already spread beneath him. The big rock in front of him was also loosening and could no longer support his weight. Could this be another of the other party's plans? Hua Xiaoheng's mind raced. He couldn't believe the other party's meticulousness. Had these people already predicted that no matter who from the Special Operations Forces chased them here, they would come over to take a look at the car? And the Special Operations Forces had the support of the Nandu satellite. In this kind of situation, there would definitely be satellite tracking in real time. So even the Nandu satellite capturing someone jumping down was probably a part of the other party's plan? Since they saw someone jumping down, and they had also been down the sinkhole before, the Special Operations Forces tracking personnel would definitely go down to the sinkhole to see what was going on. And just as they went down, the sinkhole collapsed at the right time. Because such a large-scale mountain collapse could not have been triggered by chance. Someone had done something here long ago. Perhaps, when the strange magnetic field appeared here, this trap had already begun. Hua Xiaoheng didn't know if his mind was especially clear when he was dying. In an instant, he thought of many things that he hadn't connected together before. The suspicious points connected into a line and formed a net. Standing in the middle of the net, he could see more clearly than before. But so what? He didn't have any chance to trace the source anymore, right? Although many people in their line of work ended up dying in the line of duty, and Hua Xiaoheng had long been prepared to die for his country. When this day came, he couldn't help but feel regretful, because he still had a lot of things to do. Most importantly, he hadn't found his little Guai yet. Zhao Liangzi saw this scene from the surveillance camera thousands of miles away and almost went crazy. All the surveillance personnel in the central control room were going crazy. They could only watch helplessly as their most respected and admired chief was about to be buried in the mudslide. On the screen of the surveillance camera, it showed the scene taken from a height of 10,000 meters away. What they saw was a dark blue abyss constantly expanding, like a prehistoric monster, devouring everything around it. And at the edge of the abyss, the handsome man who had once led them to achieve one achievement after another was struggling on the line of life and death. But no matter how powerful human strength was, how could it resist the power of nature? Who could save him at this time? Zhao Liangzi remembered seeing a person just now who had followed Hua Xiaoheng in, but the car didn't drive in and only stopped by the side of the road. He searched the screen in a panic, but he didn't see the person again. He had probably seen the abnormal situation in the sinkhole ahead and had already escaped, right? In the central control room of the Special Operations Forces headquarters, all the tough men who believed in bleeding but not tears were all crying in front of the surveillance camera. Where is he? How can we let the chief take the risk alone? I want to kill that group of field agents. What are they doing? Major General Hua. Chief. Hua Xiaoheng smiled helplessly as he heard the heart-wrenching cries of his subordinates through the headset. He said casually into the Bluetooth headset, "Stop howling and don't send people over to die. I failed my mission. You have to take this as a warning." He paused and said intermittently, "I don't have any last words. If possible, I hope you can help me find Nianji." It didn't matter if he died. As long as they didn't give up, Nianji would be found one day. However, he might not be able to see that day. The rocks around him rolled down and large pieces of the mountain collapsed. The trees fell one by one, and soon they would reach the land under him. The large rock he was holding on to was on the verge of collapse. Just as his arm was about to give out and be buried by the landslide, a long rope was thrown over. "Hold on." The man spoke in English. Hua Xiaoheng grabbed the long rope without hesitation and tied it around his waist. The other party used all his strength and finally pulled Hua Xiaoheng out of the edge of the sinkhole that was about to collapse. Someone is coming. The chief is saved. There was a burst of cheers in the central control room. Many people knelt down, beat their heads and cried to vent their nervousness and joy. Zhao Liangzi's eyes were blurry with tears as he watched Hua Xiaoheng be pulled forward on the grass. The ground behind him fell inch by inch into the bottomless abyss. Hua Xiaoheng relaxed his entire body and didn't put any pressure on the rope on his body. This way the other party wouldn't pull him too hard. It wasn't until he saw his car parked by the side of the road that he felt the ground under him was solid. It was no longer soft like it was about to collapse. The collapse of the sinkhole hadn't eroded this place. A pair of long legs and Russian military boots appeared in front of him. A hand reached out to pull him up. Hua Xiaoheng didn't hesitate to hold his hand and jump up. He looked up and saw that the person standing in front of him was Peter, a Russian KGB expert. He stood in front of him with drooping eyes, chewing gum in his mouth and pulling the long rope with one hand. He still looked like he would never wake up. Hua Xiaoheng raised an eyebrow and untied the long rope around his waist. "Peter? Why are you here?" "Major General Hua, Ivan said that you came on a road trip with your fiancé." "Where's your fiancé?" Peter retracted the long rope and looked around. "There's too much commotion here. I've already informed Vladimir. They'll be here soon." Hua Xiaoheng turned around. Under the long sky, dust and smoke lingered. His eyes were gray and he couldn't see the blue sky or the white clouds. The dark blue sinkhole was expanding, but the inside had already been filled with mudslides. Who knew how many secrets had been buried? There was no water in the sinkhole, and the secret passage that connected to other places was also gone. Hua Xiaoheng dusted the mud off his body and looked in the direction of the sinkhole with a complicated expression. "Did you see that black SUV just now?" Hua Xiaoheng asked in a daze. "It was parked at the edge of the sinkhole." Peter nodded. "I saw it. What's wrong? Is that your car?" "No, I chased after this car." Hua Xiaoheng had just experienced a life-and-death situation, so his mind was exceptionally clear. He knew that this matter had nothing to do with the Russian KGB. Peter brought him back to the resort villa in Tunguska, Siberia. Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji had stayed here last time. Now that he saw the room that the two of them had stayed in, it was indescribably heartbreaking. Hua Xiaoheng tried his best to endure it. He went in to take a shower and washed the mud off his body. He asked Peter to carry his suitcase from the car for him. He only brought some underwear and 2 sets of hunting clothes. After taking a shower and changing his clothes, he and Peter went to the restaurant to eat. He hadn't eaten for 4 or 5 days. Today he also drank the red vegetable soup mechanically. Before he could finish his meal, Vladimir and the driver arrived at the resort villa on the KGB's special plane. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1443, The Secret Buried by Time. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the monthly votes would be 4,000 with advance updates. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes. If you have votes, hurry up and vote. Oh, intersection. Oh. P.S. Thank you for the 50,000 Chidian coins that President Gu tipped yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1455. Hua Xiaoheng slowly finished the last mouthful of the red vegetable soup before putting down the knife and fork. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. Sit, do you want something to eat? Hua Xiaoheng looked up at Vladimir and the driver, Ivan, who were standing next to him, and Peter. The two of them had just flown to the Tunguska resort. Vladimir's face was expressionless and he didn't move. The driver, on the other hand, sat down next to Hua Xiaoheng and asked him with widened eyes. Where's Sirius? Didn't you say that you and Sirius were on a private road trip? How dare you lie to me? As he spoke, he punched Hua Xiaoheng's back. Hua Xiaoheng didn't dodge. He just grunted and straightened his back to take the blow. The driver saw that Hua Xiaoheng didn't even dodge, so he felt a little embarrassed. Moreover, Hua Xiaoheng's back was as hard as iron. Even his fist hurt a little. Shaking his hand, the driver grunted, Why didn't you dodge? Are you apologizing? I'm not someone who forgives others so easily. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and looked up at Vladimir, who was looking at him coldly. Are you willing to listen to my reason? Vladimir's face darkened as he glared at Hua Xiaoheng fiercely. You better have a good reason. Otherwise, humph. He didn't say what would happen, but it was obvious that his expression was already very ugly. Hua Xiaoheng stood up. Follow me. He led them to the sinkhole that had collapsed. Standing at the intersection, he looked at the sinkhole that had expanded by almost a third. The bottom of the sinkhole had been compacted by mudslides and trees, and there were no longer any abysses or secret passages. Hua Xiaoheng took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and handed one to Vladimir. Do you want one? Vladimir shook his head and took out a cigar. I'll smoke this. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and asked Peter and the driver. Peter took it, but he didn't smoke it. He just played with it in his hand. The driver took it without hesitation and put it in his mouth. He moved closer to Hua Xiaoheng, lit up the cigarette and took a deep puff. Hua Xiaoheng's cigarettes didn't have a brand, so they couldn't be bought on the market. It was a special brand and the quality was especially good. The standard Yunyan cigarettes were famous for being clear, sweet, and fragrant. Hua Xiaoheng lowered his head and took a puff. I came here to chase that car. Because the people in the car kidnapped Sirius. What? The driver was the first to jump up. What did you say? Sirius had been kidnapped. Who did this? Is it those bastards from other countries? Vladimir deeply agreed. His expression was no longer as tense, but he still couldn't bear it. Are you serious? Sirius was kidnapped? Hua Xiaoheng calmly recounted what had happened in Gunyanji's apartment, then said, 4 identical SUVs drove out of the 3rd ring road and headed in 4 directions. We found 3 cars and the 4th was the one parked here. He pointed in the direction of the sinkhole. Peter also added to what happened just now. He also recorded the video to show that everything Hua Xiaoheng said was true. Vladimir looked at the video in shock. They hadn't set up this trap, but who would be so powerful? They were trying to involve the Russian KGB as well, weren't they? He immediately said, Major General Hua, please believe us. We have such a good relationship with Sirius. We're definitely not the kind of despicable people who would touch someone's family just because they have a grudge against their work. For intelligence industry workers like them, it was a taboo to have their family targeted for revenge. Therefore, in the eyes of Vladimir and the driver, Gunyanji had been kidnapped because of Hua Xiaoheng. She had been caught in the crossfire. Hua Xiaoheng's enemy must have kidnapped her to threaten Hua Xiaoheng. This kind of thing was a big taboo for regular intelligence agencies. Everyone had family, so who would want to encounter such a situation? Only despicable terrorists with no bottom line would use kidnapping someone's family to threaten people. Peter smiled and said slowly, Who's so powerful that they could kidnap someone from Major General Hua's hands? The driver was so angry that he howled. I want to see which SOB is so fearless that he dares to touch our family. At that moment, Gunyanji had already become his family in his heart. Peter couldn't help glancing at him and reminded him. Sirius isn't Russian. In other words, what did it have to do with them? The driver spat at him. Peter, how can you be so cruel? Serves you right for not having a girlfriend. Peter? He was just trying to be fair. Who did his future girlfriend offend? Vladimir looked at Hua Xiaoheng's solemn expression and patted him on the shoulder. Tell us. If you need our help, we won't hide it. He pouted at Peter. Here, Peter is the best at tracking. Tell him about it and he might give you a surprise. Hua Xiaoheng didn't expect anyone to help him. He only told them about the matter in the hope that these people wouldn't cause trouble for him. Moreover, he couldn't tell them the real reason why Gunyanji had been kidnapped. After thinking for a while, he said, I know what I'm doing. I appreciate your kindness. I have to come this time. This is the last car. I hope you can understand. No matter what reason he had indeed lied to the driver. However, the driver didn't care at all. He quickly said, I can understand that you're doing it for Sirius. Don't apologize. When Sirius comes back, remember to ask her to tell us that she's safe. When he said this, he looked at Hua Xiaoheng with almost pity in his eyes. Even the most picky Vladimir didn't say a word. He didn't say anything about pursuing Hua Xiaoheng's responsibility. The three of them looked at each other and felt that Gunyanji was doomed. This kind of thing wasn't uncommon. It was usually revenge. You killed my people back then, so I killed your family to vent my anger. If Gunyanji had really been kidnapped by Hua Xiaoheng's international enemies this time, then she probably wouldn't be able to come back. Hua Xiaoheng knew that they had misunderstood, but he didn't explain because there was no way to explain it. The more he said, the more trouble Gunyanji would be in. Hua Xiaoheng didn't want the KGB to join the ranks of those who coveted Gunyanji's special constitution. He turned the car key and said, That's how it is. I have to go back. There are no clues here, but I have other clues to follow. Okay then. We'll also help you keep an eye on things. Once we have news of Sirius, we'll definitely let you know. Vladimir shook his hand and said goodbye. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and said softly, I hope you can keep this a secret and don't let anyone else know about this. The middle-aged driver didn't understand. What? Only when everyone knows can they help you find her. I don't want to be the focus of the news, Hua Xiaoheng said implicitly. Can you understand how I feel? Okay. The middle-aged driver realized that Hua Xiaoheng hadn't given up on the pursuit, so he sympathized with him. Don't worry, we won't tell anyone. The KGB was the best at keeping secrets anyway, so it wasn't difficult to do so. Watching Hua Xiaoheng get into the car and drive away, the middle-aged driver asked in confusion. Does he think Sirius is still alive? Vladimir empathized with Hua Xiaoheng's feelings and said faintly, as long as he doesn't see the body, he'll think she's still alive, living in a corner of the world. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was solemn as he quickly drove back to the airport. After completing the simple procedures, he quickly boarded his private plane. Russia's Siberian International Airport wasn't big or small, but there were still many planes taking off and landing every day. They waited at the airport for a while before the airport's air traffic control signaled that they could take off. The private plane immediately whistled into the sky and flew towards the imperial capital. Sitting on the plane, he rubbed his phone and opened it to look at the messages Gunyanji had sent him in the past. He felt very upset. More than 30 hours had passed, but there was still no news from Gunyanji. Where was his breakthrough point? Who else knew about Gunyanji's special constitution? Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat and he thought of Hijichu. He should know, right? Although Hua Xiaoheng wasn't sure, he only suspected that Hijichu might know because they had never talked about it openly. Of course, Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to take the initiative to mention it. He wanted as few people as possible to know about Gunyanji's special constitution. Now there was only Chen Lai and he was still causing trouble for him from time to time. Hijichu had never talked to him about it either. They had always been in a tacit state. But would Hijichu do such a thing? This was today's second monthly vote update, 4,000 plus updates, Chapter 1444, The Secret Buried by Time 2. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes. If you have votes, hurry up and vote. Good night, sweethearts. Chapter 1456. Hua Xiaoheng stared ahead with an extremely calm expression. His gaze was empty as if he had no focus. Intuitively, he didn't want to contact He Jichu, nor did he want to. It wasn't that he cared about his reputation, nor was it that he was afraid of He Jichu's ulterior motives towards Gunyanji. It was an inexplicable intuition. He Jichu was here for Gunyanji. He knew this very well. Hua Xiaoheng still didn't understand what his goal was. He Jichu had hidden too many things from them, but they couldn't get to the bottom of it because they couldn't get to the bottom of it. Hua Xiaoheng's attitude towards things and people he didn't understand was to stay away from them. But this time he had no choice but to talk to He Jichu openly about this issue. Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to believe that the person who kidnapped Gunyanji was He Jichu. Because if He Jichu really wanted to kidnap Gunyanji, he had too many opportunities in the past. There was no need to set up a trap like this. However, perhaps He Jichu might know more information? After all, he should be familiar with Gunyanji's special constitution. At this point, he had even laid his cards on the table with the Russian KGB. He Jichu would feel bad if he didn't ask about it. Moreover, He Jichu seemed to be very familiar with Gunyanji's past. This time He Jichu should be honest with them, right? Hua Xiaoheng weighed the pros and cons for a long time before finally making up his mind. He dialed He Jichu's number. It was 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the imperial capital. He Jichu had just finished his postgraduate class. He didn't want to eat dinner, so he sat on the sofa in the living room with a glass of red wine and stared out the window. Feeling his phone vibrate, he glanced at it and was surprised to see that it was Hua Xiaoheng calling. "Major General Hua, why are you calling me?" Hua Xiaoheng didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. "Professor He Nianji was kidnapped yesterday. Do you know who did it?" "What?" He Jichu's heart tightened, and he almost couldn't hold the red wine glass in his hand. "Say that again." He quickly switched to his phone's GPS system and saw that the little red dot belonged to Gunyanji. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and sneer. "No way. She's obviously at home. Then give her a call and see if she's at home." After Hua Xiaoheng said that, he felt that something was amiss. "How do you know she's at home? You're at her apartment?" He Jichu was speechless. He couldn't tell Hua Xiaoheng that he had installed a GPS in Gunyanji's phone. He said ambiguously, "Shouldn't they be home from work at this hour?" He had actually spoken to Gunyanji on the phone last week and knew that Gunyanji was busy forming a team for her office. She worked until 9 o'clock every day before returning home. His heart ached for her, so he tried his best to reduce the time they spent in contact. He did not want to waste her time and hoped that she would have more time to sleep. All he had to do was look at his phone's GPS location every night before he went to bed and he would know where she was. He clearly remembered that Gunyanji's location showed that she was at home last night. But Hua Xiaoheng said she was kidnapped at 9 a.m. yesterday. What was going on? Had Hua Xiaoheng lost his mind and started a lie, or He Jichu thought of a possibility and his face turned livid. He put down his wine glass heavily and opened the antivirus software on his phone. As expected, the GPS app on his phone had been tampered with. Just like the 4 lines of intelligent programming language that Hong Kongquan had inserted into the central control system to hide his whereabouts, the very advanced GPS app on He Jichu's phone had also been added with such a function. Therefore, his surveillance of Gunyanji's location was completely ineffective. He Jichu suddenly stood up. "What the hell is going on? Where are your surveillance cameras? I want to see the surveillance cameras." He knew that Hua Xiaoheng had installed a lot of surveillance cameras at Gunyanji's place. Hua Xiaoheng was on the plane, so it was not very convenient to make a phone call. Moreover, he did not want to waste any more time, so he said directly, "Go to our headquarters now. Little Zay will pick you up and tell you the details." Because his plane would take 4 hours to return to the imperial capital, he did not want to wait for another 4 hours. After speaking, Hua Xiaoheng called Zhao Liangzi again and asked him to go to the entrance of the headquarters to pick He Jichu up. He wanted to see the video surveillance footage at the time, especially the video surveillance of the 4 cars appearing at the intersection of the 3rd Ring Road. He wanted to see what He Jichu thought about the 4 cars. Although the 4 cars proved to be a cover, Hua Xiaoheng felt that the cover also had its own purpose. Why would the other party use this method as a cover? Could it be that it was just to confuse them and increase the search time? Hua Xiaoheng's intuition told him that it was a trap, but with their knowledge and technical level, he could not find out what the trap was. He could only wait and see if He Jichu would have a different opinion. Zhao Liangzi received Hua Xiaoheng's call and immediately contacted He Jichu. He found that He Jichu moved very quickly and was already on the way to the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces. 10 minutes later, Zhao Liangzi received He Zhichu at the entrance of the headquarters. Zhao Liangzi greeted the guard and led He Zhichu into the headquarters. They went directly to Hua Xiaoheng's office building. Along the way, Zhao Liangzi told He Zhichu in detail about Gu Nianji's kidnapping. He Zhichu's expression was cold and indifferent. It was obvious that he was in a state of rage, but he had good self-restraint and did not show it. However, the coldness he exuded was more severe than before. Although it was midsummer in August, the people standing next to him shuddered. This man was really angry. This thought flashed through Zhao Liangzi's mind. However, he could also understand that when Hua Xiao learned that Gu Nianji had been kidnapped, he was also in the same state. However, Hua Xiaoheng was more shrewd and could hide his emotions better. He was not as cold as He Zhichu, who could freeze people to death. He Zhichu's expression was cold as he followed Zhao Liangzi into Hua Xiaoheng's office. "Professor He, please have a seat." Zhao Liangzi also called Yin Shixiang over, and the two of them received He Zhichu together. He Zhichu had no intention of making small talk with them. He said coldly, "Where's your surveillance video?" Hua Xiaoheng asked me to come and see it. His attitude was polite with a trace of undisguised arrogance. He continued to mock them coldly, "Aren't you guys very powerful? I thought that with Hua Xiaoheng Nianji would be safe." Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang did not refute him. They silently turned on the big screen in Hua Xiaoheng's office and connected the surveillance video to it. He Zhichu glared at them and shifted his gaze to the big screen hanging on the office wall. The surveillance footage from Gu Nianji's apartment was missing 10 minutes, so their surveillance footage was from before and after those 10 minutes. He Zhichu put his hands in his pockets, and his shimmering almond-shaped eyes were silent as he stared fixedly in the direction of the big screen. Zhao Liangzi, on the other hand, seemed to be staring at the computer screen, but he was actually adjusting the surveillance footage in Hua Xiaoheng's office. He aimed it at He Zhichu and filmed his expression and actions. He Zhichu was a very powerful lawyer, so they had to be careful and not let Hua Xiaoheng be criticized by him. Yin Shixiang accompanied He Zhichu and looked at the big screen on the wall. Just as the surveillance video showed the 18-wheeler truck suddenly rushing out and blocking the video surveillance at the intersection, and then the 4 black SUVs suddenly driving in 4 directions, He Zhichu's eyes flashed, but his expression did not change. He quietly watched as Zhao Liangzi finished playing their surveillance video. After watching it once, He Zhichu frowned and asked calmly, "This is your clue? Where's Nianji? Where's the person in the car? Do you have a portrait?" Yin Shixiang rolled his eyes. "If we had a portrait, would we still need to run around like headless flies?" "What do you mean?" He Zhichu's expression froze. "You're not looking for these 4 cars and are just staying in the office. Are you waiting for them to walk into a trap?" Zhao Liangzi glanced at Yin Shixiang and said calmly, "Professor He, to tell you the truth, we've already found 3 of these 4 cars. They're in the parking lot outside. Hua Xiao just chased the other one to Russian Siberia, but he found nothing. The person we're looking for isn't in it. Professor He, what do you think?" He Zhichu's expression became even colder. He looked at Zhao Liangzi. "You're asking me what I think? After something like this happened, why aren't you trying to find Nianji as soon as possible? Why are you looking for clues here? Are you out of your minds?" Zhao Liangzi, Yin Shixiang, "Professor He, don't hide it anymore. We know how capable you are. Can't you give us some ideas?" Yin Shixiang decided to get straight to the point. He Zhichu sneered. "I'm just an ordinary professor in your country. How capable do you think I am?" That was the truth. Yin Shixiang scratched his head. He Zhichu's manpower and connections were all in the United States. His status and power in the United States were much greater than in the Huaxia Empire. But for Gu Nianji, he was willing to stay in the Huaxia Empire and become an ordinary university professor. And Gu Nianji wasn't even with him. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi sympathized with him even more. Zhao Liangzi thought about it and said tactfully, "There's nothing we can do. You see, the clues for the 4 cars have all been cut off. Hua Xiao and we are all hoping that you can help us. Besides, this is not for anyone else but for Miss Gu." "So you know it's for Nianji?" He Zhichu couldn't take it anymore. He kicked the small coffee table in front of him and said angrily, "What the hell are you doing? How could he just watch as the 4 cars ran away just like that? Where's Nianji's security? Where's your manpower? Isn't Hua Xiaoheng very capable? Is that all he can do?" "Professor He, let's not talk about the fact that our people were almost crippled by the kidnappers and are still unconscious. Let's talk about the fact that we only found out about Nianji's accident 10 minutes later." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1445, Secrets Buried by Time. 3. A reminder to everyone for their monthly and recommendation votes. The monthly vote at 8 p.m. was 4,500 plus updates. Today was Monday, so recommendation votes were especially important. Oh, intersection. Oh. P.S. Thank you, President Momo Moshi, for tipping 50,000 Chidien coins yesterday. Thank you, President Enigma Yangxi, for tipping 10,000 Chidien coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1457. Only 10 minutes? Hijichu sneered, his eyes bloodshot. Do you know that you can make a living person disappear in front of your eyes in 7 seconds? 1 minute and you'll die without a burial. What's more, you're 10 minutes late. What a bunch of useless people who do nothing. But those people didn't kidnap Nianji to kill her. Yin Shixiang retorted without showing any weakness. They didn't even kill Xiao Yi. Also, our colleagues have done everything they could for Nianji. What reason do you have to blame us? Zhao Liangzi had already mentioned Xiao Ye's condition on the way to the office building. Hijichu scoffed. This is her responsibility. What's wrong? Do you expect us to be grateful for the work you are supposed to do? How can you say that? Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were furious. They were furious at Hijichu's condescending attitude. Hijichu put his hands in his trouser pockets and said coldly, "That's how I've always spoken. You lost Nianji and now you're asking me for my opinion? I advise you to save your energy and mobilize your people. Do your job well and don't think about taking shortcuts." Professor He, do you really have no clue at all? Think about it, who hates Nianji the most? Do you hate Nianji the most? Seeing that an argument was about to break out, Yin Shixiang ran his fingers through his hair in frustration and apologized to Hijichu. It was our fault just now. We were too impulsive. I hope you can be magnanimous and forgive us. Hijichu looked at him coldly and kicked again. This time, he flipped the small coffee table in front of the sofa. Who hates Nianji the most? She's offended a lot of people for your Huoxiao and now you're asking me? Why don't you ask the people who have a grudge against him? Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi looked at each other in surprise. Hijichu's words made sense. For Huoxiaoheng's sake, Gu Nianji had indeed stood up for many people. Prime Minister Dou was far away and Prime Minister Tan was near. There was Major General Huo's grandfather, Huo Xuanong, and there was Kai Xingnan who was completely unrelated to him. Would these people have the means to commit such a crime? According to this analysis, even Huo Xiao's father, Huo Guanchen, would not be able to escape responsibility. Professor He, calm down. No one could take this kind of thing. We understand your feelings. Zhao Liangzi walked over and lifted the coffee table. He bent down to pick up the broken coffee cup and ashtray. Yin Shixiang came over with a mop and said sullenly, "Professor He, there are surveillance cameras here. If you lose your temper again, you will have to bear legal responsibility." Hijichu looked down at the broken pieces of porcelain that had fallen to the ground at his feet. His expression was cold. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were a little disappointed. They thought that Hijichu would be able to discover different clues. Because they had seen Hijichu's appearance abroad, they knew that he was very capable, but looking at him now, he seemed to be at his wit's end. Although he tried his best to control himself, Yin Shixiang could still see that Hijichu's hands were clenched into fists and seemed to be trembling. The corners of his eyes were also slightly red and watery. He looked like he was about to cry. This person's heart is also suffering. Yin Shixiang's heart softened again. Hijichu took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He said dryly, "I'm sorry. I lost my composure just now." "It's okay, we understand." Yin Shixiang quickly said and handed Hijichu a pack of tissues. "We all know that you love Nianji and are worried about her safety." Hijichu nodded and didn't take the tissue from Yin Shixiang. He blocked it with his hand. "I'm sorry, I'm very confused right now. I'm afraid I can't control my own emotions." Yin Shixiang looked at the mess in the office and thought to himself, if you can't control it, how can you not control it? But he didn't say it out loud. He only comforted him. "We are all working hard. We will definitely save Nianji." Hijichu nodded. His voice was thick with a nasal sound. "I believe you. I need to go back and calm down now. I'll think about what I can do to help." He held onto the wall and staggered to the door. Seeing how uncomfortable he was, Yin Shixiang didn't force him. He raised his voice from behind and said, "Okay, if Professor He thinks of any clues, please let us know immediately." Zhao Liangzi got up to see him out and also said, "Professor He, you have always loved Nianji so much. Now that she has suffered so much, please let us know if you have any clues. Hijichu stopped in his tracks and looked back at them. He said solemnly, I am more worried about Nianji's safety than anyone else. Don't worry, I will definitely let you know if there are any clues. Hijichu got into his car at the entrance of the headquarters and slammed on the accelerator. The car drove faster than a supercar. Zhao Liangzi shook his head and called Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiao, Professor, he doesn't seem to know much more than we do. He just looked at the surveillance footage and said he wants to go back and calm down. He wants to think about what he can do to help us. Hua Xiaoheng was also extremely disappointed. That's all? He didn't say anything? He's about to break down. He was kicking and kicking in your office just now. Zhao Liangzi walked back with his phone in hand. We recorded the surveillance footage. You can look at it yourself when you come back. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a moment. Do you have any other clues on your side? Not at the moment. Then continue to investigate. Remember to keep in touch with Hijichu, Hua Xiaoheng ordered. To Hua Xiaoheng they couldn't let go of any clues. 4 hours later, at around 10 p.m., Hua Xiaoheng's private plane landed at Terminal T3 of the Imperial Capital International Airport. Yin Shixiang was waiting for him with his driver, Fan Jian. As soon as he picked up Hua Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang said, Hua Xiao, thank you for your hard work. Is there really no clue from Siberia? What about that car? Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes and sat in the back seat of the car. He said calmly, no, that car fell into the Tunguska sinkhole. Yin Shixiang. He smiled sheepishly. It seems that these 4 cars were really a cover. Professor, he didn't give any clues today and went back disappointed. I thought he'd be able to see something. Hua Xiaoheng opened his eyes. His gaze was sharp and direct. Did he call? 4 hours had passed since Hijichu left the headquarters building of the Special Operations Forces. Not yet. Yin Shixiang shrunk his neck. He actually didn't have much hope for Hijichu. If they were in the United States, Hijichu would still be able to contribute a lot. Now that they were in their country, Yin Shixiang really didn't think that Hijichu would be able to find more clues than them. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Yin Shixiang. Yin Shixiang quickly explained, he was really angry at that time. I saw that his eyes were red. In the end he kicked over your coffee table in a rage. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng was still not satisfied, Yin Shixiang added. And we have surveillance cameras covering all angles. If you have any questions you can go directly to the surveillance cameras. Hua Xiaoheng frowned slightly and thought about it. He felt that there was something wrong with Hijichu's reaction. With how much he valued Gu Nianji, he didn't react for a long time after knowing that she had been kidnapped. Even if he couldn't do anything himself, wouldn't he still have to rely on the Special Operations Forces to urge them to act quickly? This really didn't seem like Hijichu's style. Hua Xiaoheng immediately took out his phone and dialed Hijichu's number. However, no one picked up the phone and it went straight to the voicemail. Hua Xiaoheng immediately said, Go to the B University professor's building. I want to see Hijichu. The driver, Fan Jian, quickly turned the steering wheel in the direction of B University. He called all the way but no one picked up. There was only voicemail. When they arrived at the B University professor's building where Hijichu lived, Hua Xiaoheng sat in the car and asked Yin Shixiang to go to the building manager and ask to see Hijichu. Without the building manager's permission, they couldn't enter the elevator to go up to the floor where Hijichu lived. The building manager was already asleep and was woken up by Yin Shixiang knocking on the door. He showed his ID to the building manager and said, Hello, I'm a friend of Professor He. I have something to talk to him about. May I ask if you can let us up? The building manager looked at him and asked suspiciously, You're a friend of Professor He? Yes, Yin Shixiang quickly said, I've been here before. Don't you remember? Look at my ID. Perhaps Yin Shixiang was too intimidating. The building manager nodded and said, Since you're his friend, you can call him directly, right? I did, but no one picked up. It was all voicemail. Yin Shixiang pretended to be anxious and concerned. I'm worried that something happened to him. Oh, I see. The building manager smiled. That's fine. Professor, he said he had something urgent to attend to and left a few hours ago. He left. Yin Shixiang cried out involuntarily. Where did he go? He went back to the United States. The building manager pointed in the direction of the door. I heard that Professor He is very powerful in the United States. He has his own private plane and can leave whenever he wants. He doesn't have to buy plane tickets and move luggage like ordinary people like us. This is today's second monthly ticket, 4,500 plus updates, Chapter 1446, The Secret Buried by Time 4. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommendation tickets. Today is Monday and recommendation tickets are especially important. Oh, intersection. Oh, good night, sweethearts. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.